Meeting for September 25th. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I'm going to quickly read our agenda. We have a pretty long agenda tonight. We have vacancies, which Mr. Johnson will read shortly. We have open forum, and 2 people have said they're here for that. Would you raise your hand if you're going to be here for open forum? You got just 2 people? Okay. Request to approve minutes of July 10th and 17th. Site plan review for construction of over 55 housing units at Lyman Street by Pulte. Vote to sign the local initiative program compliance certificate for sale of 2105 Simeon Howard Way. Annual town meeting follow-up and fall town meeting discussion with the town moderator. Discussion and vote on amendment to animal control agreement with Chief Laurie. Discussion on several warrant articles. Then by 8 o'clock or around there, discussion vote on fall town meeting warrant articles and close the warrant tonight. Then a discussion on contract for the interim town manager, for which we'll go into executive session. And I'll speak to that in just a moment again. And then discussion and vote on selectmen liaison to the country club operating committee. Discussion and vote on easements for the town hall alley parking lot. Discussion vote on agreement between MBTA and the town of Westborough. Discussion to vote to approve the settlement agreement between the town of Hopkinton and the town of Westborough. Town manager's report, issues and correspondence of the selectmen. Next agenda draft items, and then an executive session to discuss purchase or exchange. Now, when we have the article on the contract for our interim town manager, we have to also do that in executive session. So I wanted to ask the board if they want to have an executive session right then at 8:30 and do that then, which means we would go downstairs, or would you rather move it to the end of the meeting and have one executive session at the end, which would mean we'd come back here to reopen our meeting, but probably nobody would be waiting for us. And Ian had some concern that might appear that we were being reluctant to share what we were doing or weren't being transparent. But I just wanted to ask the board for their feelings on that.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's do this. We can break. We can break at 8:30. Sure,
okay. And you thought so?
That's what
okay, and I think so. All right. So there we go. Then I do want the public to know we had on the agenda, but we had to take it off, a change of the lease law, and we postponed that for 2 reasons. One is because legal counsel felt that it still needed some rewriting to be consistent with more current state laws. And then at least one selectman has suggested, because we've gotten so many comments on email and comments otherwise, that it might be nice to have just a meeting, a public meeting to discuss that before town meeting, so people would have a chance to chime in with the group. Would the board think that's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea. For point of clarification, not for this fall town meeting, it would be for annual town meeting then, is that correct? Because of timing and closing the warrant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then for, excuse me. Yes?
Does that mean we won't be talking about that change at all today?
That's correct.
Okay, and when is annual town meeting?
It's in the spring.
March.
So no changes will be?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And we'll announce it, quite broadly so people know. We realize that a lot of people might be here tonight, and I didn't want them waiting around, for half an hour to find out we weren't even going to discuss it tonight.
Right.
Okay?
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Edinburgh was the first to ask me if he could speak at open forum.
Thank you. Alan Falcon, Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I know I have that. I promised we had to keep this under 3 minutes. At a recent meeting, the town manager and assistant town manager presented a very comprehensive sidewalk plan. I thought that was impressive, given the amount of data and research that went into a very forward-looking plan for connecting the town. There have also been many discussions in this room, as well as others, about bicycle use, changes to roadways for bicycles, the needs of pedestrians and sidewalks. So, and we've had 2 rounds of votes at town meeting to enhance crosswalks throughout town. So I decided to take a detailed look at our crosswalks, and on some of the major roads did a survey, which I've handed out my results. I looked at whether or not there was a crosswalk at the intersection, if it was striped, curb cuts, or a connection to an apron on a road so there wouldn't be a bump to get from the road to the crosswalk. Are the ADA compliant components in place? And are there signs, or are there enhanced signs or signs with lights, such as a traffic light? You have the results of that survey in front of you for digestion, but I have a couple of observations. One, we're currently building new crosswalks and enhancing others, after which they're not ADA compliant. 2 recent ones that have been constructed as such are the crosswalk on Route 30 into Veterans Freedom Park, the enhanced crosswalk on Ruggles Street crossing West Main, and the B-Walt crossing on Route 30 at the end of the trailhead, Route 30 and East Main Street. There's a curb cut on the south side of the street, but that is lacking ADA compliance. Second, as I was doing the survey, I was approached by a lot of people, actually about a half a dozen people, asking me what I was doing and explained it. There's a perception of privilege. One of the first enhanced crosswalks we built was on Chauncey Street, connecting the parking lot of Westborough Tennis and Swim Club to their annex building across Chauncey and the Oak Street extension there. The owner at the time of that building was active in town politics. I'm not implying that anything sinister or undue was done, but I'm unable to find any data to back up the prioritization of where crosswalks are being updated and where they're being enhanced. There's nothing that I could find on the town's website, and the committee that brought forth those warrant articles has not filed any meetings with the town clerk's office, which, as an aside, is an open meeting law requirement.
We'll have to look into that.
And because of that, I think there are no clear priorities. For example, that crosswalk on Chauncey, which is, I assume, relatively low use, compared to crosswalks on 135, where we have heavy car and truck traffic that are not properly signed and are used by grade school children to cross and wait for the bus. And so I've got just some general concerns and safety concerns and priority concerns.
So as you and I spoke just before the meeting, open forum isn't usually to present a lot of information, but it sounded like you had a question, who in town is working on this? And
Yes.
I'm thinking that it would be the safety committee that would look into the state of our crosswalks. What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah, right. It's a combination of the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, we've sought funding for some of those crosswalks. The one you're talking about at Chauncey was partially paid for by the tennis club to connect the main building to the they have a preschool or a youth program on the other side of the street. And so they paid partially for that, and then we paid for it, for the lion's share of it. The town paid for the lion's share of it. And that was early on in our process. I mean, the first crosswalk sign that we put in was at CVS. I was just one of one, just to see how it was going to work. It turned out that once we put that in, then people started to request them. And then what we did do is we had an informal safety team, traffic committee, a group. I'm not going to call it a committee because it was not an officially established committee. It was the town manager, first responders, DPW, and I think that maybe town engineer. I think that was about it.
Right.
And then we would discuss different safety issues. Now we have a real safety committee, so it's a real public safety committee, and we would vet the requirements. People would request, and we take a look. We talk to the police chief about safety, and say, okay, well, let's put in we use that as a criteria, really common sense, where there'd be high traffic, and there's not a tremendous amount of traffic. I mean, you picked one there's not a tremendous amount of traffic there, But the other ones that we've installed, there's a rather high volume of traffic. And so we relied on public safety to recommend where we would install these lights.
So this wasn't an agenda item. I'm wondering if the suggestion would be for you to come before the Public Safety Committee with his survey and concerns.
Okay, fine. We haven't
Because it isn't
scheduled.
something the board would deal with.
No. We could deal with that later. Sure, it's fine. We don't
Okay.
have another meeting scheduled immediately, but I'm sure we'll do that sometime soon. We've just had a scheduling conflict problem getting a meeting together.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
So that would be an excellent group
Thank you
to
very
take care of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing all that work. Carol?
Hi, my name's Carol Fisher. In lieu of what just happened in Lawrence, is this okay? In lieu of what just happened in Lawrence with the gas explosions, I'm just wondering if that conversation can start in Westborough, and if so, who would be part of the conversation? I have in front of me right now a few copies of a map that shows 23 current leaks in Westborough. Most of them are downtown or just outside, so it's not that I expect us to explode tomorrow or anything like that, but I'm thinking that conversation should start, and I don't know who does that.
Actually, this is
Chief Purcell has actually, he and I have actually discussed this because that company has their headquarters here, but they don't do our gas. Chief, would you like to just briefly address that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm going to apologize. I couldn't hear the beginning part of that. So
That she said that she
What
has
was
a
the
map
question?
that says there are 23 unrepaired natural gas leaks in Westborough.
What are we doing to?
I guess I don't know what is the source of this.
So it was given to me about 20 minutes ago. I know you can find it online, and I know that I've gotten it from someone who works with Sierra prior to that a few months ago, and I think that this has just been pretty continuous, sometimes a little more, a little less. That's my impression, but I have no background in any of this.
Okay, so this looks like a Google map that has, I don't even know where the data came from. I don't know if it's accurate. I can tell you that we handle the majority of our leaks locally. We have a good working relationship with Eversource and national for gas, for electricity, for National Grid, Charter for cable, and we respond pretty much weekly to gas leaks in this town. We had a ruptured gas line yesterday on Connector Road. It took about 30 minutes to mitigate that, but if we had a report of any of these gas leaks, we would go to these locations, and we have metering equipment, determine if there was a leak. If it's an indoor leak, we automatically call the gas company. If it's an outdoor leak, we evaluate first. We usually do follow it up with a phone call, or we always follow it up with a phone call to the gas company saying, we investigated it. They do track some small leaks that they have, and I know they go around from time to time and repair them, but to 23 unrepaired natural gas leaks, I don't know that this is, I'm not saying it's not, I don't know the answer. If it's factual, it looks like a Google map that somebody plotted out, but we can certainly follow up on it with the gas company and see what they have to say, but I really can't answer if anything's
you.
being done about it right now.
This was actually something I'm going to be discussing in my issues and correspondence also.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for
I
showing
don't know,
that to us.
I don't know if
We'll
I'm
follow
answering
up
your
on it.
question or not, I don't, but I could follow up on it. I'm sorry?
Is the conversation going on?
No, I don't think there is a conversation about this, but I'll find out, I can start one, absolutely.
And I also am going to bring this up, Carol, in my issues and correspondence.
But it does sound like there's ongoing interaction between your department and Eversource, National Grid, et cetera, and those are acted upon quickly when they do happen. Obviously, we want to avoid the catastrophic, but
Sure, the majority of the calls that we do are not from failing infrastructure, it's from construction accidents like yesterday was, or people's home equipment failing after a certain amount of time.
Sure.
We don't have a lot of leaks necessarily that we respond to in the street, but it's usually a failure of equipment inside of buildings, to be honest. But I'll follow through on it, and I'll get you a report.
Thank you very much, Chief.
thank you.
Okay. Do I have a request to approve the minutes of July 10th?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. How about the minutes of July 17th?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, site plan review.
Can I move to open the site plan review for the construction of over 55 housing units on Lyman Street by Pulte Homes?
Thank you very much. Mr. Reed?
A second and a vote.
Oh, yeah, second and a vote.
Second.
Vote, sorry. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
First of all, thank you for taking up our question here tonight. We appreciate it very much. Right now, introductions. My name is Reed Blute. I work with Pulte Homes. We're the applicant and the company that has the purchase and sale agreement for the former state hospital property with the town of Westborough. And here with me tonight is Matt Merver. Matt works for Bowler Engineering. They're our civil engineer on the project, and he's also our landscape architect. Matt is just starting up the audio-visual equipment. So while he's doing that, I know that I've talked to a number of board members at one time or another over the past several months, either in this format here, in a formal meeting for introductory and update purposes on our progress and our conceptual plan. And some of the board members have participated in individual sessions on one item or another during the planning board process. So, I appreciate your input and your time. I know everyone's a volunteer here in these boards. And a brief update on our status. As you know, we're here tonight for a site plan review. And from our perspective, with the progress of the plans, permits, and approvals of the proposed Del Webb Chauncey Lake development, this is our final permit here with the town. Previous to tonight, we have only recently, actually last night, the planning board was able to conclude their public hearing process, and they were able to vote in favor of a conditional special permit for the construction of the project. So that occurred last night, and then with the completion of the site plan review process, we will have concluded the town permits that are necessary under the Chapter 43D umbrella that was assigned to the former state hospital property. So,
Mr. Blue, could you just make sure for the audience and for those at home, if you could just raise the microphone so everyone can hear you? There we go. Just because we can hear you great.
Sure.
I'm just not sure about everyone else.
Is that
Thanks.
any better?
Doesn't
Maybe,
sound any
perhaps?
better yet.
It doesn't sound.
All right, maybe if I get a little
Perfect.
closer.
Yeah,
How's that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. So just a couple other quick things, and then Matt Merver is going to give you just a brief update. I realize you do have a full agenda tonight, so our plan is to really give an overview of the property and not go into a great amount of detail, but however, we want to leave the opportunity for the board members and others who may have questions, and we'll really look to the questions and answers to sort out the details that you're interested in. But I do want to mention, in addition to the planning board process and the many, many meetings that we went through with the board and their volunteers, I want to take the opportunity to thank them for their time. They put in not only their meeting time, but extra time, and I know they worked long and hard on some of the issues that have been favorably decided. So I want to thank them. And as an adjunct to them, the Design Review Board. That's another group that, again, we worked very diligently with. They met a number of times with us, and we worked out many of the details with the Design Review Board, and they, of course, report up and advise the Planning Board on their ultimate special permit decision. And along with that, there's the town board members, and of course, they, again, I don't want to mention them because I'll leave someone out, and I don't want to offend anyone. But again, we had many meetings with town staff and fire, police, town engineer, town planner, Conservation Commission, and et cetera. And again, I found them all very available and cooperative, and very thoughtful on how we can resolve some of the difficult issues that we ran into during the planning process. And I think that the plan that we have come up with and the special permit that has evolved and all the input from staff and board memos, along with the design review board input and the planning board's input. The Historical Commission, too, played a role. So I think this process has been very formative and helpful, and I think, frankly, successful in getting perspectives from a number of different points of view and really blending it and melding it into a project that we think we're very excited about as a home builder. And, we hope it will be a resounding success here for us and for the town of Westborough and for the future residents, that will live there. So without any further ado, so there's one thing that I do want to mention. After tonight's meeting, it was asked of me, when we thought that we would be able to close on the property and actually transfer the property. I mean, that's a significant milestone event for us all, frankly, certainly for the town and for us. And right now, again, after the final site plan review approval, we really only have to complete the legal paperwork for the closing, which has been drafted at one form or another. It's not totally complete yet, but that needs to be done. And then we have some work with the utility companies that we need to be able to complete to get the utilities off of the future development site that currently serve the DYS properties up there right now. So our goal here, we've been working very closely with utility companies, and anyone who's driven up there has seen that we have commenced work several weeks ago on the alternate access road to the DYS facility, Allen Hall. So that's well underway. So our goal really is to complete the outstanding legal work by the end of October or early November. So we hope to be able to do that over the next 30 days. Some of it is out of our control, but we're going to push very hard on our end to do that. So that's our goal, really, be able to have a closing and a transfer of the ownership of the property within the next 30 days or so. So thank you very much, and Matt, I'll hand it over to you, and you can give a brief overview. Matt Merva.
Great. Thank you, Matt Merva with Bowler Engineering. As Reed mentioned, we've been working closely with Pulte and with the town to get to the plan that you see before you tonight. It's been a process to get here, but one that I think has resulted in a plan that we're all very happy with and excited to build. So just to set the table a little bit and run through some of the plan components, what we're looking at is a development of 700 units that would be age restricted, 55 plus, and that's in a configuration of buildings that you see on the site here of 50 units each. So the buildings are organized around a loop road with access from Lyman Street and also secondary access from Fuller Way, which connects into Lyman Street. But our main entrance would be here to a clubhouse facility, which would have a pool, some outdoor amenities, fire pit, grills, and some space inside for activities for the residents here. So that's really the front door to the project, and really the public piece that most people would see would be the clubhouse. We've organized the plan around central open space that you can see here. It's about a 3-acre open space right in the center of the site with a gazebo and walking trails, benches, and then we have some smaller spaces that organize some of the other units. There's a smaller town green right here. We're providing tennis courts and a gazebo in this area that provide further amenities for the residents, bocce courts, and really an extensive network of trails and paths that will connect to the surrounding trail network outside of the property itself. So really the outdoors is a big amenity for this 55 plus community here. In terms of the architecture, we've worked closely with the Design Review Board, who've provided input throughout the process. We started with some schemes and arrived at 5 different buildings that will be utilized around the site. These are some elevations to give you a flavor of what those look like, but they're a mixture of stone components at the bases, siding at the upper floors, in various color schemes and configurations of those materials.
And it looks like the windows have the mullions in them now.
They do. That was part of the.
It's changed on the
Mhm.
on the pictures as well. Thank you.
Good pickup there. You've got really good eyes. So these are the various configurations for those. The clubhouse in a little bit more detail, just to give you a sense of what that looks like. The front entry to the building is here. We'd have an enclosed pool area for a 25 by 45 pool with privacy screening around that, and then some outdoor seating and grills for residents to use there.
You have other fencing around that as well. I noticed in one of the comments from the Board of Health, but it doesn't look like it there. It has to be completely enclosed.
This is the fence it is completely,
I
the
see.
pool is
I can see it on there.
completely
Okay,
enclosed,
thank
yes.
you.
These are elevations of the clubhouse, just to give you a sense. So this is the front elevation, using the same materials essentially as what we'd be using on the residential buildings themselves, just in a lower, different configuration. So left elevation, right elevation. So that gives you a sense of the scale of that front door building that would be most prominent here. We've provided a signage package, which the DRB has reviewed and signed off on, and worked with the building inspector on type and size, and have arrived at this package, which includes both our entry monumentation, so that the project will be known as Del Webb at Chauncey Lake. This is the identity signage that's at that front entry along Lyman Street. And then we have various temporary signs throughout the project that would come down once construction was complete, and then permanent wayfinding and directional signs. So we've provided detailed information on all of that signage, again incorporating some of that stone material into the entry monumentation that would be consistent with the stone used on the building, so everything will have a nice consistent look to it. Worked closely on the color of our signage with Hazel, using historic colors that would be indicative of period of time that more colonial in nature. So that's the blue you see there. It shows up a little bit lighter on the screen here, but it's a really nice color. And then our temporary signage, which these things would come down once construction was complete. Permanent wayfinding, just to let people know which buildings are in which direction, how to get to the clubhouse, how to get to the various loop roads throughout the site. We've also worked closely with a sort of a working group, a task force on creating connection for a multi-use trail to get to the surrounding trail network, as I mentioned earlier. So our proposed connection to that would be along Lyman Street. Here's the clubhouse, just for orientation. And we would have a 10-foot wide multi-use bituminous concrete path that would connect to this crosswalk here, which connects into the existing trails across the street, across Lyman. So that's been discussed throughout several different meetings, and this is the final plan we arrived at that was signed off on at the last planning board meeting. That's just the tail end of that trail. And then just an overview of the future sidewalk connections. I skipped a page here by mistake. The reaction time's a little slow on the laptop here, sorry about that. So the red lines you see here are existing or proposed sidewalks that would create a connection down to the Route 9 Lyman Street intersection. So connecting this project with the larger pedestrian system beyond. This was a very preliminary, just rough sketch. We've been developing that further in coordination with the town into the plans you see here, which show the connection from Fuller Way down Lyman Street. There are a couple of places where that crosses the road, and we're sort of finalizing those plans at this point, but we're pretty close to a layout that we think works. So we've got those sheets enlarged. This is the Route 9 Lyman Street intersection. There are some proposed sidewalks that are part of the intersection improvements that are ongoing, and then we pick that up from here northward along the western side of Lyman Street. And as you continue on down the road, we stay with that western edge, providing that new sidewalk across, crosswalk across Chauncey Street. And then we do cross over ultimately beyond the town beach. And you'll see on the next sheet a little more clearly where that is now on the residential side. We're exploring the use of the sidewalk here. We do have an option for that, but that requires a little more study, and we're still just fine-tuning that piece of it. But some connection will be made there that gets us up to Lyman, the Lyman Street entrance, the Fuller Street entrance, rather.
So the sidewalk will go in at the Fuller Street, not at the main entrance?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there is already sidewalk going up Fuller into the project site.
All right.
So that's kind of an overview of where the plan, I believe you've seen these plans right
Yes.
along the
Yeah.
way, so we didn't want to get into too great a detail, but this is kind of where things landed. And we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have at this point, if there's anything you'd like a little more detail on.
We'll start with Bruce, if you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. No,
Shelby?
don't have any questions.
Could you just pull up maybe the first visual, actually the aerial?
The rendering?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
And, excuse me, Shelby, I think Mark Silverberg is leaving in just a minute, and I wanted to know, had they reached an agreement on the ratio of affordable housing with the planning board?
So my question is a really quick one while Mark is approaching. The connection from Lyman to the multi-use trail, can you just point that out here, just visually?
Yes. This is the proposed 10-foot wide
Yep.
connection here, and then this would be a crosswalk, which connects you into...
Okay, thank you.
Trail.
I just didn't have a point of reference. Thanks.
So Mark Silverberg, Chairman of the Planning Board. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So we did come to, I guess, a two-option agreement with Pulte on the affordable housing. And as you know, the zoning requires 20%, but allows Planning Board in owner-occupied projects to reduce that to as low as 10%, provided that the applicant provides alternative affordable housing contributions. So after several work sessions, we agreed that in exchange, for the reduction to 10%, that Pulte would build a minimum of 25 affordable units at another location in town to be determined. They would have 3 years to make that happen, and if not, they would make a payment of $1.4 million to be put into a fund dedicated to affordable housing. So the reason why it's important that it's an owner-occupied project is, on an owner-occupied project, we only get credit for the units that are affordable towards our quota, our 40B quota. If it's a rental project, we would want to maintain the 20%, because then we would get all of the units towards our 40B quota. But in this case...
Speak up just a little bit.
Yeah, so in this case, the 10% would maintain our 10% affordable. We wouldn't have a reduction in our affordable units as far as a percentage of our total housing stock, and it wouldn't put us in any increased jeopardy of 40B projects somewhere else in town.
But it does give us the opportunity to build the additional units, right? That would add to our stock.
Well, yeah, we looked at Pulte, and with the help of the town planner, has looked at several sites where they might be able to build affordable housing. We've also talked with the Housing Authority about possibly building. There's questions about whether Pulte could build on Housing Authority property. It may be that we end up taking the 1.4 million and subsidizing doing some type of loan to the Housing Authority. The town would loan them the money. They would then build affordable housing and pay back the loan, and we could then use that fund to continually recycle and build additional affordable housing once that, yeah. So there's several concepts we've tossed around, but essentially, if they don't build 25 units somewhere else in town within 3 years, they're going to pay the town 1.4 million.
And if they build the 25 units for the town, will those be over 55 affordable, or will they be just affordable, anybody afford?
Yeah, I don't think we were specific on that. The Housing Authority has needs for both.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not, so anybody, they'll be for anybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think our preference with the Housing Authority, our discussions with the Housing Authority was on senior and disabled housing, which would be one-bedroom units that I think it's 10% of those have to be disabled.
So there will be some allocation for, senior and disabled in the new housing that's going to be potentially...
Again, I think until they come forward with a permit, a request for a special permit, I can't say what it will be, but they'll have to apply for a special permit. And I know if I'm on the planning board, I would want an age restriction. So I can't necessarily say that's what'll happen, but they would have to come to the planning board for a special permit.
Okay, thank you. That answered my question on that. Did you have any more questions, Shelby? How about you, Ian?
Just the one question I know that we have in our packet, and you guys have received the number of comments from the various departments. Just, you're comfortable with all of those, I call them qualifications, to be handled in what's come up in their review?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we are comfortable with their comments and their requirements.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I had.
I had a couple of comments. I just wanted to mention that, the state hospital site is perhaps the most scenic site in all of Westborough. And I recognize while we're selling you the land, we're also entrusting you with this land so that you develop this site, that you will protect this view for another generation. And it's also an environmentally sensitive site. And I hope you and your future residents will take that into consideration. So one of the couple of questions I had is, around the site currently, people can run and walk, and will that be allowed after the site is developed? Around those,
So once the site is developed, it will be a private community, and the internal sidewalks and trails are really for the residents and their guests.
So so where would people not be allowed to run from it or walk?
Well, we retain quite a bit of public property, which people still will be able to run and walk on.
That's right. There's 300 acres around the site, and
I recognize they won't be able to go in internally, but will they be able to go around it?
Yes.
So there's a dark line, it's kind of hard to see, it represents the property line. So it comes around Lyman Street here, comes down here on the Northborough, Westborough border, comes back here, cuts around an existing building that will be removed, comes down here, cuts around the back of Allen Hall, down by the tennis courts, across here, up here, and then to Fuller Way, Talbot Way, across here and backing up.
Okay.
So this section here, approximately 34 acres, is the, is the property, the
Okay.
development property, and all the surrounding area down here, around Lake Chauncey, of course here, across the street, which naturally doesn't show here, but that's where the trail over to the Cedar Swamp Trail is, goes up to the MWRA water tanks, all up through there into Marlborough, actually, and the trail system over on the west side that goes over by fisheries and wildlife, the so-called charm bracelet and the trail around Chauncey. That's all, obviously public land that won't be impacted by the development. Yeah.
And then the elevation, is that going to be higher than the current state hospital property, same height, or lower than the current properties that are there?
Well, clearly, there's many buildings up there now.
Right.
There is a height restriction, there's a 4-story restriction. I think it's 60 feet is the
So is
actual
that going to still-
dimension, and that's we're under that 60 feet height.
Okay. All right. And then I just wanted to draw your attention to the comments that sodium, there's the drainage of sodium and calcium is not going to be allowed, I believe, by the planning board. I think they've already mentioned that for snow removal.
That's right, yes, part of their special permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also about the remediation plan for asbestosis. Just to make sure that, because there's a lot of asbestosis in the site, and there's also, the lake is there where kids swim. So do you guys have a plan for that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
It all had to be done according to the Board of Health. It's in the document.
right.
Yes.
And then just for our town, will they be, because of this extra water and sewer usage by them, are they going to be charged a different rate, or are they just going to be the same municipal rate?
So we,
It's the same rate.
It's going to be the same rate? Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. I had a question for Chief Pat Purcell. What's the swept path analysis?
I'm going to defer that to Deputy First, he's been working on that.
It's the largest truck.
It's something we require them to do on all projects that come into town, and basically what it is they take a, in the virtual sense, they take a model of the fire truck and they drive it through the site to make sure that it can adequately make the turns. But it also ensures that school buses, delivery trucks, propane trucks are able to make the turns into the developments and not go into opposing traffic.
So that's something they do as they develop the roads, and you try it out when the roads are able to be used?
They do it before in the preliminary design stages. They had actually had done one earlier. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't make it into the submission package, but they've since submitted one.
All right,
So
thank
we're
you.
good with it.
And that, was it about that? And then, Mr. Leonardo, on the plantings, it looked like you were giving them an awful lot of leeway to get the planting done. Were you really happy with that? Or maybe I didn't understand it well enough.
Fred Leonardo, Building Commissioner for the town. So we have met with Pulte, myself, town planner, and town engineer, and we went over the requirements for landscaping. So we have come to an agreement. It's actually written in as part of the special permit for the planning board to when the plateaus, when the landscaping will have to be completed for each. So basically, Pulte will be on the hook for completing it before they can go on in the project as they complete one building. So we have worked out all the language on that.
Okay,
But thank you for asking.
good, okay. That was it for me.
And just since we just had a discussion with the fire department about, additional staffing, with this additional, these 700 units going in, how much of an impact will this have on your future staffing? I mean, I know we're getting 8 more firefighters in. Will this impact, not impact?
Oh, it's going to impact. So we did an impact study for the town manager and the planning board. We submitted that, did a presentation for Pulte. Our numbers were a little bit more conservative than Pulte. They also did a study of that. We came up with about an increase in about 200 calls annually. They came up with 224 annually. So you should expect to see our call volume,
And it won't be built out for 7 years, so it'll be a slow, kind of a slow increase,
Sure.
but at the end.
Absolutely.
That much more.
I think you'll see, it's modern construction. I don't think you'll see a huge impact on the fire side, definitely on the EMS though, being in over 55.
Yeah.
However, you'll see increased utilization of our ladder truck because they are tall buildings. We don't have ladders on the engines that would reach the upper balconies of this building, so the ladder truck will be a standard response there also.
So 200 calls extra per year, you think?
225?
Okay.
200, 225?
Okay.
Could you just sort of generally explain the, sorry, not you, Chief, sorry, the sort of flow of kind of the building, like what buildings will come first? I mean, sort of just, are you working this way, that
Sure.
way?
So we do have what we call a sequencing plan.
Thank you. That's what I'm
Sometimes called a
asking for.
phasing plan or a construction phasing plan. So we do have a sequencing plan. It's part of our approved plans that we worked out, again, with a lot of input, frankly, with town staff. But generally, this building right here will be the first one. After that, we have this group over here is the second sequence, and that will allow us to build a clubhouse, allow us to get our entry in. And after that, the third sequence is over in this vicinity here, and we'll be doing that because this is needed to tie into the town sewer. So this area is the third sequence, and then the fourth sequence is in through this vicinity here.
Okay.
So that's the general gist of it over, as you mentioned, a 7-year period. Our goal is to try to get at least 2 buildings a year up and sold and occupied. So that would, it's going to take us a good year to do the demolition, the hazardous material abatement first, which actually takes longer than the actual demolition in many cases. But that's a 12 to 14-month process to clean everything up there and remove the existing derelict buildings. And then we'll be simultaneously working on that first building. That's why we chose that. We've already demolished the buildings there, if anyone's been up there.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up on Selectman Hashmi's question about it being private property, so the black line that's there, will that actually be a fence or will it be a landscape barrier? I'm not.
No fence, no.
I'm more asking about the presentation of the visual presentation, and I understand it's private property, so.
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. So to the trail that Matt had mentioned in some detail, the multi-purpose trail here, that is open to the town. I mean, that is public, that section there. And however, we don't have any plans along here for any, oops. Matt, I leaned on your plan. But we don't have any other plans along the Lyman Street frontage for any kind of fencing per se. I mean, we have some landscaping there. We have some stormwater basins are along that area. So it will be open essentially up until the buildings that you see here. That area will be open. The only fencing that we have around the perimeter when it's all done, now, under construction is totally different. It is fenced while it's under construction. But once we're done, we do have fencing over in this vicinity here between around the tennis courts. Yeah.
And the pool, obviously. Thank you.
Yes, the pool naturally is fenced in.
Thanks.
Okay, any more questions? May I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd love to make a motion. I move to approve the site plan application of Pulte Homes at 0 Lyman Street, subject to the conditions stated in decision dated September 25th, 2018, as attached.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Well, congratulations.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I do appreciate it.
Now I need a motion to close our public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor? All set. Okay, so not too bad. It's 7:22. It's supposed to be 7 o'clock for this one. Okay, vote to sign the local initiative program compliance certificate for a sale of 2105 Simeon Howard Way, Unit 119. And I think we have Mr. Sanguinario here to address this, and Christie was also able to address it if we need her.
Yes, hi, Gary Sanguinario, chairperson of the Westborough Housing Partnership. I guess since Jim was not available this evening, he's probably more familiar with the request before you. I was asked just to speak briefly, just to explain what the request is and to answer any questions that you might have. Essentially, the town's being asked to sign off on a compliance certificate. This relates to a resale of a affordable unit at the Westborough Village condominium development, the Toll Brothers development in town. And I don't represent any of the parties here, just present as the chairperson of the Housing Partnership. But I reviewed the compliance certificate in the deed rider, and essentially the compliance certificate states that DHCD first has signed off on it, and this is a requirement in the event of a resale whereby there is a deed rider that's attached to the unit deed that's recorded on the title to these properties, requiring anybody who sells their unit to notify both the town and DHCD, and to get approval for the sale of the property to an eligible purchaser. Eligible purchaser, as you may know, is somebody who qualifies both on income and assets, who is a first-time home buyer and who agrees to occupy the property as a primary residence. So the certificate itself states that essentially those things have occurred, that the grantee, the purchaser of the property, is in compliance as an eligible purchaser. And I think the only concern in the emails that I had back and forth, I think with Jim and so forth, was under paragraph 6 of the compliance certificate. It states that the existing deed rider shall be null and void, which is fine because there is a new deed rider that has now been signed by the buyer and is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. The deed rider requires that this eligible purchaser notify the town after the transaction has occurred and request a compliance certificate. The compliance certificate is evidence that they have complied with all the restrictions in the deed rider, and it serves to clear title to the property at the Registry of Deeds. So that's essentially what this entails, and that's what you're being asked to sign off on. And it's of comfort to know that DHCD, who is monitoring all these things, has signed off first. So generally, the town's position on these has been, if DHCD has approved it, then you would take it under consideration and go from there.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
So the person that sells the property now still has to get sell it to get a deed rider and get a compliance certificate, right? The next if they're going to sell it on, so they're still going to be making sure that it gets sold to an affordable, somebody that needs to be in affordable housing, right?
That's correct. The goal here is to retain the property as an affordable unit so that it can be sold to somebody who would also then qualify under the state's guidelines. So it would be maintained as an affordable unit going forward. There have been some situations over the years where they can't find an eligible purchaser. So it could be potentially sold to an ineligible purchaser, but if that happens, that person still has to sign a deed rider so that in the event of a future resale of the unit, the same restrictions would hold that seller to the sale as well.
We have a waiting list for affordable housing.
Yeah. I don't think it's a problem. These days, it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Okay.
So there's.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the purchase of 2105 Simeon Howard Way, Unit 199, and authorize the town manager to execute all related documents.
Yes, and we had to have.
Second.
Thank you, Ian. We had to authorize the town manager because the document actually says the chief executive officer, and our town manager is our chief administrative officer. So that's the reason we had to have the motion read that way. So, any other discussion or questions on that? All those in favor? There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, we have Mr. Arnold here. How are you?
Hello. Although the weather may seem like it was about 6 months ago that we had the annual town meeting. And as you know, I try to make an annual visit to all the elected boards to get a review of the annual town meeting. And although that's a now distant memory, we're now preparing for the special town meeting on October 15th, and it's just about budget season to start the trek toward the annual town meeting next March. So I didn't want to forego my duties. It turned out that I was out of town for most of the 6 weeks following the annual town meeting, and then through scheduling complications of mine or yours with your busy summer, we're just getting around to it now. So if any of you remember back to March, I'm here to find out any feedback or get any ideas, and also understanding that the selectmen are quite busy, especially with the search for the town manager. I wanted to offer up my help or assistance in any way I can to help prepare for any of the upcoming town meetings or any way I can. So I don't want to take a lot of your time. I just wanted to give a chance to get any feedback, ideas for either based on last town meeting or things I should be aware of coming up for the October next March's town meeting.
Did you get any feedback you'd like to share with us from other department heads already?
Yeah, I mean, I've met with all the other, by now I've met with all the other boards. The one thing I'm going to probably, I'm going to start formalizing sort of the moderator rules. I announced them at the beginning of each town meeting. But one thing that sort of caught me unprepared with sort of a common practice was not having an essentially notification that someone wanted to make a presentation. Normally, I get notified of all the presentations ahead of time, and in most common cases, for instance, last year with the zoning for the lights at the high school, I knew there were people on both sides, and I worked diligently with both sides to understand and work out a process. So I'm going to try to start publicizing for October for next year that anyone who wants to actually make a presentation will have to sort of notify me in advance so I can go over the rules of the game, which typically are 10 minutes to put things in play, tell people it's okay to have extra slides, but after 10 minutes, and then if there's a common theme of discussion, we'll go back and let them do extra slides. So that, and of course, we all know as the way people get their news has changed, I'm constantly looking for new ways to do outreach. It was nice, although it was short notice, it was nice to get about 120 people here last Thursday. And although we didn't have a lot of time and the weather was bad for putting the usual sign out, the DPW did get a sign out with at least a little notice. But I'm constantly looking for ways to just make sure that more people are aware of the town meeting, since it's not that we all get a particular newspaper anymore. And I'm looking for ways to outreach now that there's more and more people in Westborough who haven't grown up with the town meeting tradition to understand that really every registered voter can come, can speak, and try to get the rules of the game. So I continue to work with the school department and others to try to find out if I can get invited to, parents group meetings or go to civic club organizations and just sort of explain the process and get people to feel that they know how to best participate, whatever form they choose.
Great.
So those are the key points that I've heard so far.
Start with Syed.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Arnold.
Sorry.
I just, we have, first of all, thank you for the work that you do, both here and elsewhere in town. I was wondering, as the fall town meeting has expanded, is it worthwhile having a straw poll at this coming fall town meeting, whether we should move it to a Saturday meeting? Because, I think we have 40-plus articles this time around. We had the same the last time, so I'm wondering if you just wanted to hold a straw poll of the people that are attending this fall's town meeting, should we consider making a charter amendment to have the fall town meeting held on a Saturday also?
Yeah, I'll make a note of that, and if there's a lull in the action where we want to exercise our voting devices, I can mention that, and certainly even if we don't get around to it, it's certainly a good topic to think about, because, as we all know, though I think some of us have forgotten, the move to have the regularly scheduled October town meeting was because for a while there, what used to be the May town meetings were going through Thursday, and we had like 70 or 80 articles. And originally it was thought like, well, we can put off some planning articles until the fall. And then there was like, oh, we'll do financial clean up in the fall. And then it turned out there were zoning articles that needed to come to the town in March. And so now it's sort of like a mishmash.
I'm in favor of having biannual.
The idea of a Saturday, though, we could probably much more likely get things done if there isn't so much competition for people's attention on Saturdays that it harms things. So it's worth a discussion, and I will make a note, and if we have a lull in the action, I can ask just to see what people's knee-jerk reaction to that is, and then it's a good topic probably for conversation, months to come. So thank you.
Yeah, mine kind of goes along the same thing. If I remember correctly, we had a little bit of I believe at the Springtown meeting, I could be wrong, but some double booking of the auditorium on the school side or whatever that we may have.
Right, there was concern about an event that may have been happening Monday or Tuesday if we went into Monday or Tuesday, yeah.
As we're thinking about this one, I just want to make sure that, again, with the size of this town meeting, of course, we hope to get done in one evening. I think there's a likelihood that we'll go multiple evenings and just assuring that we have the space reserved for that time, and then going forward to make sure that with the communications with the schools. I guess that's a question, I probably should know the answer, but is that something
location is used.
Yeah.
so again, I think it's a good thing for us. I mean, a lot of times I don't see the actual request for use of the school till I sign the permission for the tables, but I think a good thing, especially with so much in changing that as Christie or you work through, what we probably should do is just together review the plans and make sure that we stretch out and put the request for the schools for a day or two beyond what we think, rather than forget to do it and do that. So that'd be sort of a good, if we can all sort of do a check and balance to ourselves to do that. And I'll also, I'll also make the plug that although there's no way to really enforce it, there is wording, I believe it's in the charter, not the bylaws, going back that for March anyway, there is a designation that's town meeting week, and we actually, as a town, have asked all civic organizations, other than for religious things that can't be rescheduled, to please not to schedule too much that week. This goes back to when town meetings typically went Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So, I mean, I think we can sort of also try to rally around the idea to set aside those weeks to try to get all the organizations in town to take a breather from their activities and try to encourage people to come to town meetings. So that's a good idea.
Great, thanks.
So thank you.
So Christie, on that, if we can just put that on our list too as a board in town.
Yeah, I do remember that. Thanks for remembering. That was one of my pre-town meeting things that I forgot to remember. Thank you.
That's all I had. Thanks.
I think you've done a great job at town meetings to balance giving as many residents an opportunity to speak as possible, so obviously sharing their opinion and thoughts while still balancing that conversation. So I would just encourage you to do that and to reiterate as we open meetings or we take breaks to reinforce that, because I think that's important in terms of time limits and all of that, and knowing that you have your cell phone handy and you're not checking Facebook, which you always tell us you're not, or texting your mom. But I think it's important because it balances the conversation.
Right.
Thank you.
And another that's actually a good jumping off point. Another thing to remember is, especially because you have a bigger forum than I have, is to remind people that the biggest way to affect change is to get involved before town meeting. As we all know, legislative processes are long and tedious, and it may seem like the town meeting is the legislative action, but there are many, many committee reports, discussions that are had at the federal and at the state level legislative process. The actual showing up to vote, is not the best time to affect change. And as I found out when I was younger, the best way to affect change is to volunteer and to go to meetings and to make your voice heard, to actually help affect what the articles and motions are well before the town meeting. I think the continuing to impress that upon people.
No, I think it's a great point, and sort of evidence of that was the postponement of the leash discussion, where we feel like there's more information, there's been public input, and so we need to have a more robust discussion before we present it on the town floor. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Trotter.
Look forward to seeing you on the 15th.
That's right. October 15th, 7 o'clock.
October 15th.
Be there.
7 o'clock, high school.
All right, thank you, Bruce.
And save the 16th and 17th, too.
That's right. I've got them booked off.
Me too.
I think the only thing I want to do, I agree with everything everyone else has said, but every once in a while, you hesitate to tell somebody that they're off point, or that they're talking too long, or they've really strayed. And I think it's very important. It's frustrating for people in the audience when it happens. I know it's probably frustrating for you as well, and you may have other things going on in your head at the time. But I think you should feel very free. I think you certainly have the board's support to say, look, that's enough. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but you've got to quit now.
Okay, thank you. I think I
Because
have
it's a
gotten
rule-
better at
it's
it.
a
My
rule
first
that you
years,
have.
it's a little intimidating, as you know.
Yeah.
Much better at it.
Thank you.
Yes, you have gotten better at it,
thank you.
absolutely.
But I constantly keep in mind the balancing of realizing that
Yeah.
for some people, it's their only chance to voice their opinion, and trying to, as Shelby and everyone else always mentions, balancing it so people feel they've been heard, but not to feel that they're being heard at the expense of other people's time and
Well,
attention. So.
the point I'm taking is this: they take advantage and add things in that aren't to the
Right,
point.
yeah.
I mean, you say you
Right.
have to
Yeah.
discuss the article, or if it's something new, but sometimes people take it as a forum for themselves to really go off.
Again, not to be defensive, what I've been trying to do as I've become more comfortable in the moderator's role is to try to be much more focused on what the boundaries of the article are and to keep the conversation
Yes.
on that. And then rather than saying, well, it's about, this topic, and then saying, well, this is slightly related, I'm trying to do that. But I would
Yeah.
certainly glad for the encouragement, and thanks for
Yeah, and
letting me know that
definitely
you
our
support
support,
that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if anything comes up, I'm always available. So thank you. I'll let you carry on.
We know where to find you.
Yes, usually here.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Alrighty, now, discussion vote on amendment of the animal control agreement. And that is Chief Lowry and
I thought
Christie?
So as the board's aware, we entered
Yeah, Chief.
into an animal control agreement with the towns of Grafton and Shrewsbury effective July 1st. Since beginning that agreement, it's going very well, but the town of Grafton has identified a need for some animal inspector services. Just the quarantining of dogs when they have a dog that needs to be quarantined. Other animal inspector responsibilities would be held by someone else that they employ as far as inspections of barns and things like that. So I did speak with the chief and with the animal control officer, and they feel that they can absorb this, but because the agreement is specific, saying that Grafton is not receiving animal inspector services, we felt we should bring it back to the board for your approval.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Chief Lowry, or any questions?
Are we going to get any extra money for this, or is this basically the...
It's the hours. We're paid by the hour.
Right. So they pay us for the 15 extra hours, and it really isn't going to be that many calls. They anticipate about 6 to 10 calls a year.
And Melinda said that she could handle that within her time already.
Yes.
Yeah. So it isn't an increase in our time of our person.
So
It's not an increase.
It's not,
Yeah.
okay.
Would you like me to make a motion and then discussion?
Yes.
Or- Okay, I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve the amended intermunicipal agreement for animal control, animal inspector services with the towns of Shrewsbury and Grafton.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor? There you go. Thanks, Chief Lowry, for being here. Even though we didn't need him.
No, we'll call him up in a
We'll call him right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, that's right. Okay, the very first thing. Now we're doing questions and discussions on warrant articles. Chief Lowry has sent us some slides and information ahead of time. And we set 30 minutes for this entire section, and his slides, he has 23 slides, so
I'm
I'm
going to fly
hoping,
through them if you want, or I can avert it. I don't know how to set this up.
we just need to,
So while that's being done, let me start off by saying, the last 8 months have been very productive for me here at the Westborough Police Department. I have to tell you, I'm truly honored to be a police chief, and hopefully you want me to stay around for a while. But I want to be clear that I'm working towards a succession plan. I want to be clear that as honored as I am to be the first police chief selected outside the Westborough Police Department, my goal is for it to be the last. to pick my successor and also mentor and bring people up to speed to be my next in line successor. So this is a long-term plan, and it starts today. We're woefully understaffed, and we're going to answer some of the questions that you were talking about the state hospital project, or how that's going to affect the police department through these slides. With that being said, I'm going to turn the presentation over for a bit to my executive officer, Lieutenant Minardi.
Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Lieutenant Minardi, Police Department. Thank you for having us here today. We're privileged to do a presentation before you about our warrant article. In the essence of time, I'll try to be as brief as possible, and obviously if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer those. As you know, our article has a couple different layers. What I'm going to address is our specific requests for our increases in our line items to our current budget. And I want to preface that with the understanding that we're in a current budget cycle, and the administration understands that, and we're trying to be as understanding with that as we can, and understanding that it's not a budget that we developed. So I'm going to jump right into it. General overtime. So our overtime line items, when we talk about our budget, we have a line item budget. It's mandated by law that we have a line item budget. It's broken into two sections. It's salary and wages, and it's expenses. So we're going to jump into expenses, and our biggest issue is our general overtime. And so in doing some research, you can see that in FY18 we had about 3,000 hours of general overtime paid. On an additional note, we should see that there was an additional 2,000 hours of compensatory time granted in lieu of pay. So we can talk about that a little bit further on if you want to. I'll try to just jump ahead and cover our general overtime. What we're looking to do is have a responsible budgeting practice based on past expenditures, and you'll see that in the next slide. As also, we're trying to address what we look at as some minimum staffing level issues. So if I can advance it, there we go. All right. So a historical view of the last 5-6 years of our general overtime expenses. You can see where it was budgeted and where our expenditures were. If you look ahead at 2018, you can see the 71,600. That was March town meeting, where the chief was able to have it an increase to 100,000. But if you look at what our expenditures were, they were basically 143. So what we're trying to accomplish is use our overtime budget appropriately, but budget it appropriately. If you look through about a 5-year period, it was budgeted $60,000. There was no increases there for even a cost of living increase. If we're getting a 2% raise, then our overtime budget should increase by 3% because it's a time and a half issue. So we're trying to correct that. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record when I keep saying this. We understand we're in the middle of a budget cycle, but we're trying to do the best we can with a budget we didn't develop. So backing up a little bit, we have a couple different line items in our wages that cover overtime. There's our general overtime, there's training overtime, and there's court overtime. So then the next issue we're trying to address is our training overtime. If we look back at FY18, we had about 800 hours. We're looking to improve that by about 300, which, if we're successful in this article and adding 2 positions, that equates to about 36 hours of overtime per officer throughout the year for overtime training. And when you look at our mandated training, you see that we have 44 hours of mandated training per year. That's above and beyond any specialty training we send anybody to. So I think budgeting for 36 hours of training is, a pretty moderate moderate level. We have 32 hours of in-service training we do at the training council. We have 8 hours of mandated firearms training, and we have 4 hours of mandated taser training a year. So one of the things we wanted to impress upon you is it's not just our ideas of what we think training should be, because we all understand that training is important for better service, better officer protection, etc. But there's also a liability to the town for failure to properly train its police officers. The foundational case is Canton versus Harris. And without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, it basically says that yes, you as a town, a city, etc., can be sued civilly for failure to train your police. The Harris case was very simple. There was no deaths. It wasn't anything horrific. The city of Canton failed to provide medical, they failed to take a prisoner to the hospital, and that prisoner ended up successfully suing the city of Canton, went all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's really the foundational case when we look at about failure to train police officers. So we looked at our history, just going back a year or two, for our specialized training. Again, other than that 44 hours of mandated training, we had 20 classes of specialized training attended by our officers in FY17. Chief Laurie came on board in FY18. We ratcheted that up to 40. And so far, up until the end of September, we're scheduled at 49. So the important thing to take upon that is we take our training seriously. There's a reason for that. There's a protection to the community for that. But there's also an expense occurred with that. And like I said, that doesn't include the mandatory in-service training that we go through. So this is just a basic graph of where our overtime training was. You'll see that over a number of years it was statically budgeted. I'm not really sure where that spike came from at the 36.5. I wasn't in charge of training then, but it has dropped off gradually since then. And you see from my request that, we're requesting to increase that at a reasonable amount. So then to get to the other side of our budget, when we talk about expenses, we looked at out-of-state travel, and again, part of this had to do with training. There's a lot of training classes that are available outside of the state. Obviously, you have to pay to travel there. There's only a handful of companies in Massachusetts that provide law enforcement training. Some of them are really good. Some of them aren't so great. The federal government provides some outstanding training that's free out in Georgia at their federal training facility, but you have to pay someone to travel out there. There's also, a number of professional conferences that members of the command staff could attend to go along with that out-of-state travel expense. Dues and memberships, pretty straightforward. International Association of Chiefs of Police. The chief has graciously invited all of his command staff to join the Mass Chiefs of Police Association, which is a great resource. It gives us networking, gives us access to training as well. We started the crime scene investigators unit. We'd like to join them, have them join a professional association. Our accident reconstructionist is one of the best in central Massachusetts. That's pretty straightforward. Again, our expenses on training and education, I think I've already stated how important that is to us. It reduces liability. We based our budget on 3 classes a year at an average of $350 per class per officer. That's, some of our classes are free when we can find them. Some of them are $150. We have an officer right now in a command level training class at Roger Williams University for 2 weeks. It's $1,800. So we tried to make that a reasonable amount, again, understanding that we're in the middle of a budget cycle. Books and periodicals, straightforward. You go into our patrol records area where our officers write reports. There are books, law books that are 4 or 5 years old. They need to be updated. Contractual services. In talking with Patrick Cullen, I don't think I need to explain how important he is to everybody, but he says we're going to have an increase in networking costs moving into the new facility. We also have a new policy management system, PMAM, we're going to be working towards improving and upgrading all our policies, working towards accreditation. Lieutenant McLeod did an outstanding job researching companies and getting quotes and found the absolute cheapest program we could use to do everything that we need to do. And it's an absolute needed, like we can't do without it. So lastly, I come to our recommended new line item for equipment that's required to equip and maintain our specialty assignments. Keep doing this. So here's a short list of specialty assignments that we currently have in the police department. Some of them we've had for a while. Some of them we lost and we're trying to bring back. Some of them are new. The reality of it is every single one of them requires equipment, and we have no funding mechanism for any of them. So we decide to run a program, kind of like a state unfunded mandate, yet we have no way to fund the program. And I know that the fire chief's here, and I want to give him props for the dive team unit. We assigned one of our officers, actually 2 of our officers, but one of them actually goes into the water to the District 4 dive team. He was able to secure, I think it was over $6,000 in grant funding to equip our dive team officer. Our drone unit, outstanding, piece of equipment for us to have. We initially funded it through drug forfeiture money, but we trained some of our operators recently in nighttime flight, but we don't have a night vision camera. That camera costs $6,000. So all of these assignments are very important to us, but they require money. So again, I appreciate you allowing us to be here and give you a presentation, and I'll turn it over to the chief.
So as you can see, we're doing some really great things, but you need some tires that meet the road. I've said this numerous times. When I left the town of Shrewsbury and headed off to Auburn, we had 29 sworn here in Westborough. Shrewsbury and Westborough are very similar staffing levels. They've since doubled. We still remain at 29. Why do I want this deputy chief? I want to provide a clear chain of command. I want to provide the chief with an executive level officer for confidential consultation on executive level decisions, and it's executive level position outside the union salary position. And I'll be clear, you just heard from hopefully our next deputy chief. I think it's extremely important that we understand where the direction of the police department is going and who is going to be in command for the next 12+ years. The traffic officer, that speaks for itself. The #1 complaint I get every day, to include today, besides talking to some good folks downstairs about the dog issues we're having, is traffic related. So that traffic position, basically in a nutshell, is going to be very, very helpful to address certain concerns. And I think in the end, there'll be a net zero cost to that, because the fines, half the fines that officer brings in will come back to the police department. Number of sworn officers, as you can see, has not increased at all. When we talk about the state hospital property, if you're going to bring 1,000+ people into town, close to maybe 2 in some areas, if you get 750 units, 2 people a unit, if you just go by our area standards out here, you're going to see that we're woefully understaffed. The population increase, and I want to talk about this. When I talk about the deputy chief's position, You know, I really want to be able to advocate for Westborough outside of the department. For instance, the lieutenant mentioned the fire chief. When we went over to Fountainhead and we had that fire, and we have a building with occupancy, you know, of 500, yet 1,000 come out, well, that is clearly, that our population is not 19,109. Our population is much higher. If we have 100+ kids in each class grade, from 13 grades, K through 12, well, that must mean we must have 2,000 or 3,000 other people, parents, grandparents, whatever, in town. So yes, staffing has not grown basically since the 90s, and that's what we're here today to talk about. Call volume is higher. Well, why is that? We're collecting our data and we're actually processing it to everything that we're doing. For instance, when I put the extra officer on patrol, which is why my overtime line is almost dead now in the water, and I'm willing to do the hard things I have to do if this warrant article doesn't pass, which means I won't be at the selectmen's meeting, I'll be a 4 to 12 supervisor to make sure we have adequate staffing. So I upped that minimum staffing. We had 2 officers and a sergeant and 3 officers on the road. And basically putting that 4th officer on the road, starting the strategic enforcement program, the STEPS program, traffic program, we wrote basically 538 citations in May of 2018. We wrote 211 May of 17. So that's going to reflect an increase in what we're bringing into our log. The officers are doing more work, and we're going to log that work. And we have been busy. We've had several very sensitive investigations, victims of crime. When a woman or a person is severely victimized, there is no budget. There are no end to the resources that we're going to provide that victim. We had to have a detective sergeant at a crime scene for over 10 hours waiting for chemists to come in for blue light to collect DNA evidence at a crime scene. There is no budget for that. So this is, again, this warrant article will address some of those concerns. You can see the call volume increase, and it has been drastic. We're exceeding what we did all of last year to this point this year. We have been busy. We've had a bank robbery. Did we solve that bank robbery? Yes, and we solved 5 others. Did we have that $300 gold larceny scam at one of our hotels? We solved that. Now we're working with authorities from Maryland and Rhode Island solving those cases as well. So our officers are doing a hard job, but that takes money. We don't have enough detectives, so that means my detectives are working double. This basically is showing you where we're running for minimum staffing. And minimum staffing was 3 officers. We had over 200 shifts that were manned without a supervisor. When we talk about failure to train, I'm going to also talk to you about failure to supervise. I firmly believe we need to have a supervisor on every shift, and that's something in time we're going to be able to do. This is the first domino. Getting this on the warrant, convincing town meeting that this is the right move to make, having the study, which is another article, so we can really fly over that one, that's going to tell us that what I'm saying is probably not correct. Just what Chief Purcell did by bringing on 8 people when his study said 11. If we have a fire department at 45 strong, we should have a police department probably in that number. I'm not saying that's going to be all at once. It's going to be a mission that we have to work on together, but it's something we need to talk about. The Forbes building. Dispatch is not in the station. I have an issue right now with office hours. As you know, people complain about our office hours when we're not there. There's going to be a time, I think, when we're downtown where we're going to have to talk about stationing an officer in that building 24/7 to take all the lobby call reports and basically servicing the public and watching our prisoners. Who is going to be watching our prisoners when we make arrests down at Forbes? There's going to be increase in overtime costs there. By having a station officer, it's going to decrease those costs because I'm committed to ensuring our officers are safe on the street with maximum manning. This is what I'm talking about. We should have 1.8 officers per New England. Northeast is over 2 officers. WPD, we're under 1.5 per 1,000. In my opinion, we need to work towards changing this trend and bringing staffing on board. I think it is mission critical for officer safety and public safety that we have the proper manpower out on the road. I shared with you a bunch of times a story about me sitting at my desk at 7 o'clock at night. 2 officers are on the road, they're booking a prisoner in Southborough, and the sergeant was filling details for 2.5 hours. There was no one on the road. I was the only officer available with the sergeant if something happened. I went home that night, couldn't sleep, and then we upped minimum manning the next day. We have a detail software now. There was a cost to that. We're filling that software. It's basically, we plug it into the software, it takes care of everything, it puts it out. It's getting that officer back on the street. When there's that car accident on the side of the road, he's basically on his iPad that is for the command staff, or on his iPhone, filling that detail while he's waving his arm directing traffic, not running back to computer drive, miles away from that scene, leaving that 2 officers by themselves, because on the midnight shift, we are still running low. So basically, staffing for 20,000 people, and quite frankly, I think we're probably quite higher than that population-wise if we were to look at the numbers. If we look at our daytime population, we're talking 50, 60, 70,000 people some days. It took me 25 minutes to get from Computer Drive to this building today. It's unbelievable. I sat on Route 9 forever. So at the end of the day, that's not 18, 19,000 people. We have, I don't know how many coffee shops and banks. 19,000 people don't drink that much coffee. So we need officers to deal with that. This is the sliver of Westborough PD. You know, I came from basically a 19-man department, total with part-time people. My budget here is $400,000 more. I mean, we're under budgeted, we're understaffed, and we need your help. We need the public's help. This is a team sport. The total increase in wages is $228,767. The total increase in expenses is $68,795, with a total increase of $297,562. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and hopefully you have a clear understanding of the path of where we are and where we need to be.
Any questions? Bruce?
No questions. I think it was a terrific report, and reading it and hearing it, it's doubled down.
Shelby?
Hi, Chief. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just, I had the benefit of actually speaking with the chief at length to answer questions, so I won't repeat them here, but it was extremely helpful, that conversation and this, so thank you.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. Am I correct that these numbers here for fiscal 19 are prorated? So then, do we know what the numbers would be for fiscal year 20 with this, or estimate?
We'll be working on that shortly. Before I put the cart before the horse, I would like to see if this goes forward, and then I'll develop my budget, and I'll have that for you very quickly.
And the second one, and I apologize because I may be the only one here, but can you help me again? So the two increases in staff, one is, so the deputy chief position, that's an add, and then so you're going to backfill, you still have two lieutenants then?
Correct.
Underneath the deputy chief, okay.
So right now I'm overseeing the Detective Bureau, and I'm giving it as much attention as I can, but it's been very taxing on me. I'm going to create a detective lieutenant's position, which again will now beef up our investigative section that's woefully, again, undermanned. The traffic position will go out on the road doing traffic. However, it will also cover Caleb Polsino's shift, who entered the Boston Police K-9 Academy on Monday. Very proud of him. Again, thank you, Chief Purcell, for acquiring us a $60,000+ vehicle. By being on Homeland Security and making sure that was brought to my attention and we could apply for that. But yeah, one will be a patrol, there'll be two patrolmen hired. One will backfill a patrolman being promoted to sergeant. The other will be a traffic officer position. Again, a sergeant will be promoted to lieutenant. Perfect. So there will be some upward mobility within the department.
Perfect, thank you. That's all I had.
I'm glad you asked that, because I didn't get there were two positions new. I thought it was just one.
I know that there were two, and I just couldn't figure out whether that was the really question.
And as I said, the
assumed
traffic
it was,
position
but-
in time, I think will negate itself, to be honest with you, because like I said, fines that are brought in, they don't go to the police department, they go to the general fund.
Yeah.
Chief, great presentation. A couple of things. One, will you be posting this online?
If you would like, yes.
I think this, I think it would be helpful to have this presentation posted online. And the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, the deputy chief position will be a non-union position.
Correct.
So that may help you,
Yes.
with negotiate. Correct me if I'm wrong here, right?
Yes, it's vital, I believe, to have someone outside the union to assist me with confidential matters, discipline, and the like. And I think it sends a clear message to the town and the staff, the direction of the department.
Okay. And then, are there any other grant monies that we can get to go to some of these things, or is it hard to get those monies for those trainings?
I mean, that's a great question. I applied for the COPS Fast Grant several times in my previous employ, and Westborough's in much better shape than where I came from financially, and I was denied every time. It's really cities and towns that are in real hardship that get the COPS Fast Hiring Grant. Obviously, when it opens up, I will apply for it. However, I'm not a glass half-empty person, but I don't think it'll be awarded to us. But it'll be an exercise that we will take on, but I don't think we'll be awarded that grant.
If I could add on to that, as being one of the grant writers for the department for many years. I've written it for many years, and we're denied every year. The last time we added an officer in 1995, it was under Bill Clinton, when he said he was gonna hire 100,000 police officers.
Okay.
That's when we added our one position. But, you know, when you look at cities like Chicago, they're gonna get federal money before a town like Westborough. So we do apply for it.
Okay.
And we don't get awarded it.
And thank you for providing this presentation. There was one thing I was, a couple of things I had was, you know, the use of the drones. In, you know, California, you need a warrant before using a drone. Are there any such policies that we have here in Westborough for the use of these drones?
Whenever we utilize it, we're obviously, we have a policy in place. We obviously are going to adhere to that policy. And if a warrant needs to be written for us to utilize it for certain things, for instance, we've used it a lot, quite frankly, it's just at our events of town. We don't need to write a warrant to utilize it for those things. If we're doing it for an officer safety issue because an officer's tracking in the woods with a canine, and we want to have some surveillance, I mean, those are the things we've really been using it for. But if we need to write a warrant, of course we will.
Okay. And second, you know, we're having this conversation in light of the fact that there was just, I believe, a recent police officer that was shot in the South End, and there have been already police fatalities. So this is, you know, a difficult time to be a police officer. I fully recognize that, and this is why I'm fully supportive of, you know, your initiative on training. But there have also been other instances, and which I'm sure you're aware of. You know, there have been police that have been called at Starbucks and at for people that have been sleeping. So I'm just wondering, will you be training our officers or our police staff on how to respond to scenario, or, you know, how do we de-escalate such situations without resorting to arrests?
Lieutenant Minardi wrote a grant with advocates. We're going to be having clinicians riding in the cruisers. This was an initiative that's a regional initiative. Westborough spearheaded it. It's with Northborough and Southborough as well. And we've already started de-escalation training in that area. Yeah, the training that you're receiving, and we have data on the different class people are going to, officer safety is paramount. If we can de-escalate a situation, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start here when we can. Obviously, when we look at issues that happen in Weymouth and everywhere else, where, you know, someone has a rock and an officer hesitates, you know, the unthinkable can happen. So sometimes you have to start here. And that's when it comes to training. And we want to make sure at the end of the day that our officers make it home to their families. They're human beings, just like...
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Everybody else asked, and the presentation was wonderful. It was very nice getting it ahead of time, but it was also very good to have you walk through it with us.
And can I also commend the chief for his community initiatives? I saw him this Saturday, which is, I've seen him frequently about town. I know that takes a lot of effort, and it makes a huge difference to the citizens to see you out. Thank you, Chief.
It's going to be a lot nicer when I get to town, and I want to thank Lieutenant Minardi for all his hard work. He's been extremely helpful on many different initiatives, to include this. He's been doing a fantastic job for us. I really want to give him, you know, 5 stars for assisting me every day, day in and day out, and for all the hard work he did on this presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Lieutenant Minardi.
Lee, just not a question, obviously for the chief, but just, I think it would be helpful, my understanding, Christy, that you receive like regular call volume kind of type summaries from the chief. I think it would be helpful, I don't need to see them weekly, but even sort of a monthly or quarterly basis, just to sort of see the types of calls that are coming through. I know that was certainly of interest and we've asked Chief Purcell about that, and we've seen that in his presentations, but I think it would just be sort of visually good to see, just, you know, however, a bar chart or something of the types of calls that the police are responding to.
Oh. Well, they probably keep a record of all
No,
that.
Christy, you get those updates regularly, so I think if the board could just get a copy of those, again, not weekly, just something you decide, monthly, quarterly, I think would be helpful.
I didn't know that they get that.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so now we're on to Youth and Family Services Director, and I think Kara is here.
Hello.
Hi.
Kara Presley, Youth and Family Service Director. Nice to see you all.
You too.
So, with the addition of a few key edits to a proposed job description, I am in agreement with a proposal that my predecessor originally put before you to request funds to increase the position of the Youth and Family Services Administrative Assistant from 19 hours a week to 40 hours a week, making it a full-time position. In the draft job description you have in front of you, this is the job description that I am basing my recommendations and support on. There are a few changes you will see that will reflect the current needs of the department as I have assessed them since I've arrived. Just to point out those changes and additions, in case you don't recall the previous, any previous job descriptions that were put before you. In the summary section, you'll see an addition of develops resource and referral information and assists youth and families to access resources. Okay. And I'll explain my rationale for this in just a minute. In the essential duties and responsibilities section, you'll see added duties, including identifies and maintains records of community agencies, programs, and resources relevant to youth and family service clients, serves as a liaison to community agencies, programs, and resources in conjunction with youth and family service staff, meets with clients in the office to provide information and assist to access resources and services that are needed to improve quality of life, and that's in consultation with the director and the staff counselors. Maintains adequate and secure record of client interactions. And these additions are on top of the changes that were previously proposed by my predecessor, which included the addition of the duties that talk about responsible for marketing and communication in the department, and provides information to the public about program and resources. So those are all would be new additions to a job description for the 40-hour-a-week person. The education and experience section is also changed. However, the draft that you have in front of you has not the updated language. What it should say is high school diploma or GED and 1 to 3 years of related experience and or training. As it stands right now for the 19-hour position, it says 1 to 3 months of related training. And I do see this position and the needs that we have in the department requiring much more experience than that.
Yeah, you can see that.
As was explained in the earlier presentation by my predecessor a few months ago, the administrative requirements of the youth and family service position have grown over the years due to increased demands on the department. For example, the administrative assistant is required to provide administrative support to more meetings and to conduct significantly more promotion and marketing across multiple platforms and through a variety of communications, including an increased number of face-to-face meetings. Her role in promoting, the current administrative assistant's role in promoting youth and family service information not only creates increased awareness in the community of our services and programs, but it also benefits the youth and family services because of the relationship building that occurs through that outreach. It's because of these important relationships, in fact, that the department has had and will soon have more successful collaborations with so many groups and organizations in the community. And not only does the administrative assistant bring great knowledge of resources to the department, she also plays a central role in facilitating clients' access of these resources. So this is the key reason that I've added these components to the job description. By increasing the hours worked and adding key responsibilities, the Youth and Family Services Administrative Assistant will be able to serve Westborough residents as a community resource specialist, providing unique knowledge and access to the much-needed resources. Because our department's counselors specialize in clinical work, and because my role as director is focused on the larger needs of the department, the need for individualized clients and families to get connected to outside resources and services has not been able to be prioritized in the way that we want it to, despite the fact that there is a consistent demand for this that I've seen very clearly on a daily basis even since I've arrived. Up until this point, all of the youth and family service staff have attempted to support clients with these outside needs on the side of their primary responsibilities. But with these increased funds and hours for the administrative assistant position, resource development and referrals will now be a defined priority of the department. At the same time, the administrative assistant will continue to fulfill the administrative needs of the department, ensuring that there's no backlog in the completion of administrative tasks, which at this point are hard to complete under the current hour restrictions. In all, the administrative assistant, by moving to the full-time, will help to facilitate the growth and expansion of our services in Youth and Family Services as I have it planned and envisioned under my leadership.
Very good. Any questions for Kara? I think you've been very busy in the short time you've been here to see that, to so clearly define what should be in that job description for that full-time position. I really appreciate it. Coming from a clinical background myself, I think you've done a lot of work in a very short time. Been very observant. Anything else?
Just a couple questions. I know that the last time was really about going through the process. Has this gone through the process and approval and?
Yeah, Kara and I worked really closely on creating the job description, and we talked a lot about her needs in the department, so.
And this is a job description that's been voted and approved by the Youth Commission as well.
Thank
so
you.
the job description and the amendment to the classification plan will come to you at a later meeting, but this is just a draft, so you have an idea of what the additional hours would do.
But this is also coming to the town meeting, right?
The appropriation is what town meeting's being asked for. The selectmen can approve the addition, the job description, as well as the amendment to the classification plan.
So the second question is, so we're approving just the salary and wages. This will go to a benefits position. Is that already covered in, we think, in the?
Right, so we typically try to budget for the addition of a certain number of families on the benefits plan, so we feel comfortable that adding this one position we would be able to cover.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All set. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. The Sandra Pond funding, Derek wasn't able to attend tonight, but he did talk to me on the phone. And if you wanted to know what it was, basically, he needs to move a fence to allow access to the head wall at one of the dams. So he has to actually put it on the head wall. And that way, Earl Story can get his equipment in to clean up the brush between where the fence is now and the head wall is now. And they haven't been able to in the past. And that was because Derek didn't realize that he could actually drill holes in this dam. And when the folks that he talked to at the state discussed it with him, they said that he actually could do that. That it wouldn't have anything.
The holes in the dam?
Yeah, and the top. I mean, it's in the top. It's perfectly, it's perfectly acceptable. And he had just thought on the conservative side that it wasn't. So since he's found out he can actually do it, it will help with maintenance a great deal. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, John? You look like you were going to stand up. Okay. So that's what it is. And the amount of the increase in the budget, because it's already in the warrant article, in our warrant budget, so you might not realize it, it actually added $5,300 to what we had seen before. But Christie's already put it in the warrant that we'll be looking at tonight.
Right.
Okay, then Article 30, DPW and Town Engineer.
What about Article, oh, so yours, yeah, sorry, Article 30, sorry.
Yep, Article 30.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, how are you doing? In June, we went out to bid to have the Banyan and Cumberland Farms sewer pump station to be refurbished. At the annual town meeting, $2 million was appropriated to do this project. In June, the bid came in at $2.5 million. So we're shy on what we need for money. I'll have the town engineer speak to the 1.2 that we're asking for.
Okay.
Good evening, Carl Bald of Town Engineer. As the director just spoke, we went out to bid in late June, and we had two very close bids. They were actually amazingly close for such a project of that value at 2.593 and 2.598 million. So the low bidder has agreed to hold their bid. Their bids were in order and whatnot, but we cannot award because we didn't have that kind of money. So we sponsored an increase in the authorization on this town meeting, and the low bidder will hold his bid, and if we are successful in obtaining the funding, we will award. Obviously, the bids are higher than we expected. I developed the original value for the spring town meeting based on the engineer's estimate for the project, which was done in June of 16. When I did the numbers, I moved it forward. I increased it to reflect the increase in costs. And of course, we always provide funds over and above the actual construction. We have to pay for construction administration and observation. We also always leave some contingencies. So therefore, we put that figure in, and we actually enlarged it a little more, and to be safe, and we were surprised to find out now that the bid environment is different than it was when we put out our last pump station, which was that was the Otis Street. So anyway, we've increased it. I think the limited number of bidders reflects the concept that this is a difficult job. These pump stations have been there for 30 years. They sit on small parcels. One of them is near the entrance to Cumberland Farms on Flanders Road at 165 Flanders. The other one, you probably wouldn't know where it is unless you're a pump station buff. And it's on 117 Flanders Road, so that would be on the other side of 495. They're very similar. They're similar construction. So you only see a fence and some hatches and some connections and whatnot above ground. Everything else is tank, and pumps are underground. And so anyway, they're operating on tight constraints, and the one at Cumberland Farms needs to have the wet well tank, the storage tank replaced. These are conserved 20 feet in the ground. They have to drive sheeting in, basically steel walls, so that you can excavate. It's all specialty work, therefore it's expensive.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, so Carl, or John, so 2 million was appropriated. You said roughly 600,000 above is what the bid came in. We're asking for 1.2. Is that 1.2, is that to what you spoke to, contingencies and other things? That's why we're asking for 1.2?
Correct.
Okay.
So the original construction estimate was about 1.6 million. We asked for 2, and that gives us the extra money for management and contingencies. Our bid now is about 2.6 million. I do not want to, or John does not want to come back here again and ask you for money, and we don't want to get caught during construction. There is some liability that we'll find things that we don't expect when we dig to replace that wet well at Cumberland. So we're not so much on the conservative side with this request. I don't want to stop that job in the middle and wait for another town meeting to get funding.
Perfect, thank you.
You could be without a pump.
Correct, and that will cost us in the long run because it will have to stay on temporary, and that would be a very undesirable situation.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes?
So I'm fully supportive of this. Later on, we're going to be discussing, we're going to be getting some money from Hopkinton. Can we put some of that money to offset some of the costs or will that go into the general fund?
It will go into the general fund.
So we can't put it.
It'll go into the enterprise fund.
It'll go into the enterprise fund.
So that can be used to pay for some of the costs associated with.
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, okay. And that's, I guess, the second question. So will this money will not be coming out from the property taxes, it'll be coming out from, I guess we'll see a higher sewer bill, am I getting that correct?
It's out of retained earnings.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Hopkinton will be assessed for this improvement.
Oh,
also.
Even better.
Yeah.
They tried getting out of it. Jim caught
Okay.
on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was good. Okay, then we had the school articles and about transferring or reauthorizing spending from older warrant articles, and there was some concern from Leah's. Leah had some concern about how the articles are written, so she and Christy spoke with town council, and I think came up with an agreement on how they should be written. So do you want to explain that, Christy? Is it how they are on the copy we have now?
Yes, the copy you have in front of you is the correct copy.
So is it just 26 that was changed, or were
It is
26, 27, 28?
It's 28 and 29. So after looking at the warrant, our finance director had some questions about some of the amounts that were put into the warrant articles, and the school department got together and responded, and they sent back a revised warrant article. However, they're pulling together money from previous projects. Some of that money has been borrowed and some of it has not. And so we just spoke with town council as to how we could word the article so that it was appropriate. So for the first article, you'll see that there's a vote to amend the debt authorization provided for in Article 10 of 2015 town meeting for the Gibbons.
Which article?
I'm sorry, 28.
28, okay.
For the Gibbons School project, and then further to reallocate surplus funds. So that's to amend the debt authorization for the borrowing on the Gibbons School, and then also to reallocate surplus funds that we actually have borrowed.
Okay.
And so that's going to require a 2/3 vote at town meeting. And then the next article is similar, where we had to amend the debt authorization for the Article 10 in 2015 town meeting, and then also reallocate surplus funds for money borrowed from Article 21 of the 2018 town meeting.
Okay.
So these articles have been sent back to the school, and we're all in agreement.
So Article 29 was the one, there was some question about how much money was there of the security, so this fixes that.
Yep.
And then puts money in from the
29
pending
was,
the debt authorization.
29 was where we had
Questions,
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So we've got Superintendent Bach nodding her head. So are we all set on that then?
Yep.
Okay. Now, Article 33, appointments of town meeting. Excuse me. No, that,
26 is the Forbes Municipal Building.
We had some questions about that.
oh, I thought, that's why I asked if we were doing 26. And we started on 28.
That's okay.
The 26 isn't a school item, it's a town.
Yep.
item.
So Article 26
Oh,
is to
Forbes
increase.
building, that's right.
Is to increase the debt authorization by $500,000 for the Forbes Municipal Building. In previous drafts of the warrant, we had incorrectly cited two town meeting votes, which would have put our current budget at $16.2 million. That second town meeting vote for the $1.2 million was actually passed over. So our budget right now is $15 million. So it created some confusion. If you look in your packet, Jim Malloy has provided the budget summary, which shows that our current remaining balance is a negative from the 15 million after adding in all of the expenses for the Forbes Municipal Project. We're at a negative 33,580. So we do feel that the 500,000 will cover us through the end of the project.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions. At first, Jim provided the list of expenses, and I was just curious, the technology, and I think I was almost like 500% overrun. There was $533,000 in audiovisual security access control systems. What was that? Was that not factored in when the building was first put out to bid? How did the 500% overrun come from, or where did it come from?
So I would probably have to put that on a future agenda so that someone from the committee could come and talk to you about the technology.
Okay.
But I do know, that our technology people in the schools, as well as Mark Stockman and Patrick Cullen, have worked with AdTech and other contractors to make sure that the building is secure and has the technology needs.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, again, looking at the bills, there was almost $875,000 on furniture. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there was furniture that was already owned by the departments in the building. So where did this $875,000 for new furniture come from?
Yeah, so like with Town Hall, we're purchasing all new furniture for the building.
So all of that equipment that was there is being thrown out? Was it bad?
So we did hold an auction, and we did sell some of it, and we're using it right now in our temporary locations, but again, like Town Hall with a brand new building, we're putting brand new furniture into it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
On that? Okay. Now, Article 33, appointments of town meeting with concurrence of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Hashmi, did you see how that was rewritten? is we had Christie discuss it with town council to make sure that the article would accomplish what you had set out to have it accomplish.
I saw the draft. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on it?
I have not looked at this. I mean, give me a moment, please.
You want a minute?
Yes, please.
Well, Shelby's reviewing, I mean, I'll just comment, I'm still not in support of putting this on.
I'm not either.
I just think that it's, we just went through a process of charter review, and as I said at the last meeting, I think picking certain things out of there is just setting a precedent that I don't think that we should be doing at this time, because I feel like it could just open up the floodgates for what I think are nitpicking things. I think that's something that is, folks are interested, it would go on a follow-up charter review. I don't think that it's something that needs to be addressed. I think we do have a professional town manager is the way we run, and that charter review committee, through all of their work that they did, felt that that was the correct responsibility of the town manager without the concurrence of the board. So personally, I don't believe that we need to address it or need to change it.
I agree.
We should be having that discussion when we go through the warrant articles to say which ones we're going to approve or not, okay? Now, my question was just, was it written to
I'm fine with it.
accomplish what Syed had hoped to by putting it on there? That was that.
I would just point out that town council did point out that in addition to making the appointment of the municipal building committee subject to the concurrence of the selectmen, it also makes the appointment of the board of assessors and board of health subject to concurrence.
Right.
Actually, briefly, I'm not on the Board of Assessors, but I'm a member of the Board of Health. I briefly discussed this with the Board of Health just before I came to this meeting.
Okay, well, we can save that for the discussion of the warrant. Okay, so Article 34, Charter Amendment, about town resident requirements. Christie?
Yeah, so this, when we came to you at your last meeting, the recommendation was to remove the bylaw completely. The board was interested in having it just redrafted. So we added that non-residents could be members of boards and committees if a town meeting, general bylaw, town charter, board of selectmen, or state law indicate that non-residents may serve on said committee. The warrant in your packet says non-resident town employees. But if you look at the list of committees that are impacted by this bylaw, you'll notice that the Emergency Planning Committee is also impacted, and they do have members of the business community that serve on the LEPC, and feel that it's important that if they do live out of town, that they be able to continue to serve. And I know Deputy Ferschke is here to speak to that, as he's the chair of the committee.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions on that one?
Just 1 minute. So the proposed language says that, I mean, it seems pretty barn door, like wide open.
Mm-hmm.
My interpretation, tell me if this is correct, is that basically that a resident must, the default is that you must be a resident unless town meeting, the general bylaw, or the charter, this board, or state law indicates otherwise.
Right.
And so how would we indicate otherwise, procedurally?
Sure. So when you form a committee, or when a committee is formed by town meeting or in the charter, typically the makeup of the committee is set out. So for example, this board put together the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and included certain town staff on that committee. Several people on that committee are not town residents. And so since this board has said that people in certain positions will serve on that committee, then this bylaw would allow people who are non-residents serving in the particular positions to serve on the committee.
So the board, essentially, what would be the most salient one is that the board would be saying we want, like on the EDC, we said.
That was town manager, I mean, that was town meeting outline, so that's where town meeting, so EDC was created by town meeting, and the town meeting said this is who they wanted on the board. Unfortunately, our bylaws didn't allow that, so people that, even though the town meeting said that we should have these various department heads on there, they had to resign because the bylaws, and town council's view was that our bylaws overrode that. So that's an example of where town meeting basically, and a warrant article created a board that had non-residents on it.
So, but doesn't this says, if a member is no longer a resident of the town, that individual shall be deemed to have vacated the position. Non-residency may be indicated by removal of the voter list, etc. So
that was somebody who went on as a town resident, though. Right. So they were a town resident when they were appointed.
Okay. I don't know, the language of this still I'm not comfortable with. And so using the EDC as the examples, because that was sort of the catalyst for this. So wouldn't this require then, and I didn't bring my town charter the one night I didn't bring it. Wouldn't this require then an amendment to that within, if it's listed specifically as a committee?
I would think if the person, say it was.
And the only reason I'm saying this, Lee, is just because we just said, the Board of Selectmen defines how the committee, using diversity or EDC, right? So if the board defines sort of the construct of the committee, isn't that somewhere other than a meeting minute? Isn't it in here?
The diversity committee was just created at a board meeting, so it was just in the minutes.
Okay.
So, for an example, if we had a town employee who was a resident, and that's why we had them on the committee, because they were a particular type of town employee with a skill set that we wanted on that committee, and then they moved out of town, the Board of Selectmen could say, we want to appoint this person who now lives in Holden to this committee.
Yep. Okay.
So we could still do that.
Sure, yeah, this would be flexible.
I just want to make sure we don't have to amend someplace else by changing this. Am I making any sense? I just want to make sure that this language, we don't sort of go, oh, great, we think we fixed it, and then we go, oops, we didn't fix it, 40 pages later.
I think what this would require is that a member would have to tell us that they moved out of town, because we put them on the committee assuming they were a resident. So if they left and moved someplace else, they'd have to tell us. And that would cause them to vacate the position, at least temporarily. And then if we decided, oh, well, let's take somebody else from DPW and put them on, and not you.
Yep.
Right, so typically when you are creating the boards and committees, if you're putting a town employee on the board or committee, it's because of their skill set in that position.
Right.
And so I suppose you could appoint a DPW. You could say that a committee is made up of certain members, and one of them is a DPW employee that lives in town. But as far as needing to remove them when they're no longer a resident, the current bylaw would say that, but this would allow for you to continue.
I get it.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Chris, I think, again, thinking back to the EDC, it was not individual names, it was positions.
Yeah.
So that person could be a resident, may not be a resident, but it's the position that's on the EDC, for example, the town manager, not a individual's name.
Right. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to this. So this paragraph starts with, any applicant must be a resident of the town to be eligible. Then it says, the next sentence is, if a member is no longer a resident. That doesn't help with the situation we just talked about a person starting out to be a non-resident, but needing to be specifically appointed based on skill set.
But the underlined piece addresses that, right? So they must be a resident unless the town meeting, general bylaws, town charter, board of selectmen, or state law indicate that that non-resident may serve on said committee, board, commission, or authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the second part is just addressing the fact that you may have appointed somebody who was living in town, and then they left.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
That's not very well written. That's not very clearly written.
Right, I mean,
Based on divine, yep.
now that we've gone through it 4 times, I'm clear. Thank you.
I mean, you could remove those last 2 sentences.
No, I think they're
Okay.
fine. I think it's just, unless this, that, and everything else, it just, but I'll rely that the process works of appointment.
And town council read all of these?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't see it as a
Okay.
problem.
Smart
Okay.
to me.
No, it's good to ask. So Article 44, the high vac replacement, you said Jim Stewart was here for that?
HVAC?
Article 40. Oh.
This is the new one that was added.
Which one, is this the one is this the one that we're supposed to be looking at?
That's red line, that's the.
Yeah, they're the same. One just shows you the changes since last time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what article are we on?
42, the high vac replacement?
41.
It's 41.
Okay.
It's 41.
Got it, okay.
Okay, sorry.
So
Oh, yeah,
Jim Stewart,
sorry.
our Buildings and Grounds
Yep.
Supervisor, is here, who can speak to that.
Now I'm hot, speaking of HVAC.
Good evening. I was at the DPW for another thing, and I walked in, and I noticed that there was dehumidifiers placed all in the building. I had some questions, because the HVAC system should handle the humidity in a building. So the fact that John had gone out and purchased home dehumidifiers and put them all out, at that time, I also noticed the carpets were wet. I talked to Brian Antonoli, and I said, you should contact your service provider, which is Alonco, and have them come in and check out the unit. In the meantime, I had discussed with him about installing a BMS system, which is a building management system. It keeps track of all of your HVAC functions, as well as other things can be hooked onto it, your generators and everything. You can get alarms when systems go down. He thought it was a good idea and wanted to get a cost on it. So I brought in Empower Automation, who did this building as well as the library and the senior center, to just take a look at what we had there. So when he came, he looked at the units, and he said, these units are really obsolete. They've gone past their life expectancy. We can't hook a BMS system up to these because they don't have the cards, the motherboards that need to be in them to facilitate that. So at that time, I had discussed with him about possibly, upgrading the systems. In the meantime, Brian had contacted Alonco, who came up to find out why the humidity was so high in the building, and come to find out one of the units in the coils on the AC had rotted out and had basically dumped all of its refrigerant into the air, and was only operating at half capacity, which was causing the issues. So we found that out subsequently to the BMS discussion. At that point, we went and we achieved three quotes, and we came up with the figures that are on there now to replace the 2 rooftop units and to install a building management system that they could run from the DPW, and I could also run it from here at the town hall.
I would like to add that because of the fact that they're at the end of their life expectancy, to repair that one unit is going to be $7,000. And it's apparent to me that we're going to start to see a lot of failures. So I think it would be wise to replace the 2 units.
Right. Yep. And the manager's statement also reiterated that, John. Thank you.
I should have you go through my house, if this is the stuff you pick up.
Any questions
I
on
don't want
this?
them in my house. It cost me a lot of money.
I have a couple questions. So does the proposed article at approximately $36,000, does that include Like, what's the service maintenance agreement? Not in detail, but at a high level. I mean, you know, and have we followed that in the past, or are we maintaining our own systems?
No, we don't maintain our own systems. That actually goes out to a bid process. The DPW is presently using a different contractor that I use here at the town hall, at the senior center, and at the library. We all use another contractor. We did have them price the DPW also. They came back a little higher, so they decided, you know, they went with Elanco, who was the low bidder at that time.
At that time, yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're in contract now, so even though they're one of the bidders, even though they do not get it, the units will be under warranty for a year. I don't have the details of that warranty with me right now, but after that time, it would be under the maintenance contracts that we purchase to maintain the units.
So, I'm confused, though. The Elanco is not the low bidder in this?
No, they were not.
Okay, they were not, but they are the current provider and maintenance servicer of the existing system?
Yes.
At DPW?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have the units serviced once a year.
Okay, so we do follow that
keep
regular,
track of
yeah,
it.
okay, all right, thank you. And so this quote, the 36,000 is inclusive of maintenance, or that's on top of?
No, the 36,000 is to replace the two, they call them rooftop units, but they're not rooftops, they're on the ground. Those came in at 26,000 and some change.
Yep.
And then the BMS system was another 92 or 92.
99.
So
Yeah.
I'm certainly not telling you how to negotiate your contracts, but I know sort of as a homeowner, right, that's sort of but wait, you can also purchase a service agreement at this time of purchase, and it's going to save you money in the long run. So do we routinely explore that rather than bidding that out separately?
These units will be under a manufacturer's warranty.
For 1 year?
For 1 year.
Okay.
At the end of that year, there would be, and the low bidder on this was Capital Engineering, who is the present provider of our service contracts here, the senior center, and the library.
Okay.
At the end of that year, it would become the responsibility of the town to
go out to bid. So we do bid that separately?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not an engineer, but I was just reading before this. So are we going to have is it 98% of AFCU, whatever? How efficient will these units be? Or am I using the right scale for this or not?
I'm not aware of exactly where the proficiency is on it. I know that the units that we're getting are comparable to the ones that were there, except for they're 12 years newer with newer technology and better energy efficiency.
But you don't know the percentage of the efficiency?
I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, we are going to vote on whether or not we want to support the articles that are in the current warrant.
Can I ask, just being the first time on this one, so are we doing this sort of as?
I was just going to explain that.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's all right. Usually what we do is we go through it as we did last time, and if you have a question or you don't want to support an article, then you call it out.
Okay.
And we go back. So then presumably we'll have all of them, or 2 or 3
We'll
less.
vote all on questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then we vote those and then go back to the ones with the questions. Okay. So on Article 1, are there any questions or hesitations? I'm not hearing any. Okay. Article 2, Town Manager Recruitment. No questions? Article 3, State Hospital Maintenance. No questions. Article 4, Highway Department Overtime. No questions. Article 5, Building Department Budget. No questions. Article 6, Council on Aging Budget. No questions. Article 7, Police Department Budget. Any questions? I have to bring the Chief Laurie up all over again. Article 8, Police Department Operations and Staffing Study. No questions. Article 9, Police Department Time owed payback. No questions. Article 10, Youth and Family Services budget. No questions. Article 11, Upper and Lower Sandra Pond Dam maintenance. No questions. Article 12, ADA self-evaluation and transition plan.
Question as it relates to this and 13.
Question for this and question for 13. Okay. Article 14, Article 14 is ADA compliance at recreation areas. Article 14, Charter Review Committee clerical. Any questions? Article 15, Economic Development Committee grant program. No questions. Article 16, appropriation of transportation infrastructure fund. No questions. Article 17, trail construction, Sagassus Drive to Meadow Road. I have a question on that. Article 18, easement surveying and trail design. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Sorry.
Question. Okay. Article 19, trail easements. Any questions?
Well, I think they're all related, so yes.
Article 19?
Yep.
So they're related to the questions that you have?
Well, 18 and 19, I just need some clarification.
Okay, you said 17 and 18. I said 17, you said 18, okay, and 19. I'm sorry. Okay. Article 20, prior year bill, Country Club Operating Committee. No questions. Article 21, amend FY19 Country Club budget. No questions. Article 22, Country Club enhancements. No question. Article 23, property appraisal. No questions. Article 24, Country Club electrical, building and grounds department. No question. Article 25, rescinding excess debt authorization. No question. Article 26, Forbes municipal building increased debt authorization. No question. Article 27, transfer of funds to the Fales MSBA schematic design phase of the project. No questions. Article 28, transfer of remaining Gibbons School, Armstrong School, and Hastings pre-K project funds. No question. Article 29, upper parking lot guardrail and front sidewalk replacement at high school. No question. Article 30, town sewer system amendment. No question. Article 31, town sewer system. No questions. Article 32, town water system. No question. Article 33, charter amendment.
Is that a question?
We have questions on that. Article 34, general bylaws residency requirement and amendment. Are we okay with that now?
Sorry, I just noticed we're missing an S, so it should be multiple non-residents. So I'll just add that in.
Where?
Indicate that non-residents may serve on said committee. In the middle of the bylaw,
No,
Article
residents.
34. Yep.
Got it.
Right there. To pluralize it. Okay. Article 35, general bylaw amendment, Sandra Pond Reservoir regulations. We had questions about that last time. We got over those. 36, amendment zoning bylaw from the planning board. Article 37, amend zoning bylaws, section 2520. No question. Article 38, zoning bylaw amendment, section 2600. No question. Article 39, authorization of land swap, 3 Stone Hill Road. No question. Article 40, zoning setback for Fales Elementary School. No question. Article 41, DPW highback. No question. Okay. So I think that was 3 that we called out. Okay, so we had a question on 13.
12 and 13.
12 and 13. Thank you. And 18,
17, 18, 19.
17, 18, 19, yep. Okay,
33.
thanks, Ian. 33,
I think that's it.
that's it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so may I have a motion to approve or to give our support and approval of the articles that we have not pulled out for questioning?
I'll make a motion to do that.
Wait, hold on, so if you don't speak up, that means you've approved it. For instance, I thought that this was just about questions, or if it's...
No, I said if you had any concerns or questions.
What if you don't support
Concerns,
the...
I said if any concerns of non-support.
Oh, then I'm going to go with 17, 8. Yeah, okay, that's fine. 17, 18, and 19 are included.
Yes.
We already pulled those out, okay?
Okay.
All right. So everybody set with what we pulled out? Okay. So,
I'll second Bruce's motion.
We have a second? Okay. Any more discussion on those remaining articles? All those in favor? There we go. We've got our approval. Okay, so now we'll start with Article 12. Those questioned.
So, do you want me to go?
Yes.
Okay, so my question as it relates to, I'm not really questioning Article 12, which is the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan and allocating monies for that study, but the town manager's statement does say in that explanation that this article seeks to fund a study to determine compliance with the ADA for all town-owned property. And the town was supposed to have undertaken the study prior to 1990, et cetera. Great. But then you go to Article 13, and we're allocating almost 70, or we're proposing to allocate $70,000 for town-owned property, specifically for ADA compliance. I'm not necessarily opposed to the, becoming more ADA compliant, but it seems to me if we're going to do a study of town property, we should do that study properly, and then determine, prioritization of where we're going to fund what and what are the priorities. So I never understood when this was originally presented why 13 was on there when we have a study. So maybe just an explanation would answer my question.
Sure. So as part of the open space plan, our conservation officer did undertake a self-evaluation of the properties in the open space plan. And he did work with a company to identify the cost to correct some of the issues that he identified for the open space plan. The open space plan would not have been accepted without this self-evaluation that he did. It's the items that he seeks to correct in these recreation areas we expect we would see on a self-evaluation and transition plan. I do know that the Finance Committee last night asked that the conservation agent be prepared to actually increase the dollar amount to create additional handicap parking. So it's something that we would expect to have to do in the future. It's up to the board whether or not you want to wait for the consultant to do the self-evaluation plan and do it later, or if you want to do it now.
But we've already found non-compliance problems.
Right, exactly.
That we were able to identify without having a group come in and do this for us.
For those pieces.
For those pieces.
Well, I was going to say, we know that there's an issue with the back door at Town Hall in terms of, or ADA accessibility. So I'm just saying, there must be other issues. This has been specifically identified. I guess I just don't understand why it's being called out.
I think this is related, I listened to some of this discussion. I believe this is related to us having our open space plan being accepted. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is why.
Right.
This is a priority. This is why you have this money. It's because part of us having
An approved open space plan.
Means we have to do this work, and because of that, that's why this is.
So the open space plan was accepted. As part of the open space plan, we had to do that self-evaluation. So these were identified in that self-evaluation.
And this is why we.
And we certainly are addressing other, ADA issues as we're working on buildings, such as, we are working on the handicapped access. So it doesn't fall in line with that.
The additional background on the open space, that wasn't clear to me. I'm fine.
Okay. So now, may I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept Article 12 and 13.
Second.
Okay. And offer our approval. All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So now, 18, 17, 18, and 19. So I had the question on the first one, and I think it's more of a question for Bruce. At our last meeting, I think you said that this would provide funding for the construction of a trail that goes right all the way across town?
Well, no, this section would just be, it's near the wastewater treatment plant. So Meadow Road that leads into the wastewater treatment plant and comes out at Saskis Drive, which Saskis Drive is a driveway. It's a commercial driveway that leads then to Otis Street. And we received just this year, this is the second year that we applied for it, and this year we received a grant from the Department of Conservation and Recreation for $56,994, which if you accept that grant, you have to match the funds yourself. We're asking for the full sum of $56,994, but we're also going to be seeking in-kind donations. So volunteers, you get paid $30 an hour for each volunteer that does work on the trail to make up the lion's share of that. But just to be safe, to make sure that we're able to match that, because we have a very strict timeline. We have to get this done by June this coming year.
Because of the grant?
Because of the grant. The grant stipulates that we have to be done by June. So that's a real, when you consider winter and early spring, that's a short time frame. So that's why we've asked for the full amount, and that's a normal practice.
So is it slightly misleading that the manager's statement says it's for construction of an east-west trail through town?
Yeah.
Because it isn't really,
no,
it's
right.
stopping
Well, the trail,
short of
right,
going
the
through
trail,
town. It's not going to get us to Grafton.
But no, but I think the
No.
that rest of that sentence, though, by completing the Saskis Drive to Meadow Road section.
Correct, yeah.
It's
So
part of the process to make but it's just for that segment.
But it isn't going to get us through town.
No, it's not going to get us through town.
All right, so I'm
No.
just wondering
So
if that might be misleading to say it that way. Maybe it should just be that this is completes part of the trail. The end result is supposed to be to get to Grafton.
Just say part of the east-west trail through town.
Yeah, it's supposed to go from Southborough to Northborough, our section, this section.
Oh, this is supposed to go south. So will this get it from Southborough to Northborough?
No. This funding right here will only deal with the section of Meadow Road.
Can I just make a suggestion then? Can we just, Christie, look at this, just change the town manager's statement to say the article would provide funding for construction of a portion of the east-west trail through town by completing the Saskis Drive to Meadow Road section. So just add that portion.
Yeah, thank you. Because somebody read this and said, well, that's not true. And I thought, I don't want that coming up at town meeting, having somebody say it's not true.
And that's really not part of the warrant anyways.
Yeah. Right. I know, but we usually say something like that. They usually use the town manager's statement. Okay, then may I have a motion on this article? Well, I can move it because I was on the question. So I move that we approve to support this article.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? We have
Opposed?
4. And 1 opposed?
1 opposed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Shelby.
Yep. So, question, Bruce, we'll go to our expert here. Can you explain to me the relationship between 18 and 19? So I understand Article 18 is moving us from, to design work.
Right, to fund that,
To
to fund
fund-
survey and design work, correct.
Okay. And Article 19 is really, there's no monetary amount
Nope.
attached to it. It's really just permission to explore easements.
No, it would be the permission
To-
for us to accept, for the board to accept, Board of Selectmen to accept the easements.
So just fundamentally, if we're still working on design, I mean, how do we know that are these all-inclusive of all the easements that are needed?
Yes, that's correct.
These are all-inclusive, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the
And we've actually, this isn't all, there are more easements than this. These are just added easements to a list that we already have ongoing. So we have other easements that we've accepted. And so this completes the list.
Okay, and I apologize, I don't recall when Don Burns was here to do his more detailed presentation. Is that comprehensive list of easements plus this one, is that available somewhere so someone can find it?
Yeah, sure. We have a list.
Is it on the website?
I don't know that it's on the website.
Can we make sure it is?
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay.
We can do that.
All right.
Do you have that list? Do you have the map?
I just think that there's a lot of interest in this, and we've heard about sidewalks and accessibility. I know that's totally separate, but I think the more we put out there, the better it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. My question is answered.
Okay. So do I have a motion to support these two articles?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? We have 4 and 1 opposed. Is that 1 opposed?
Ed is opposed.
Okay. Now 33.
Yep, I questioned this one, so I'll keep it short because I already said it before in the inappropriate time, so I apologize for that. But my recommendation is that we would remove this article from the warrant.
I agree.
That'd be my motion.
Any other? Oh, that's your motion? Okay, so
Second.
that was a second, okay.
Second, yep.
Any discussion?
I feel that this board, the charter was not written by God. It was written by people. We've identified that there are problems with the charter. I think waiting to fix them till another charter commission is foolhardy. I think this addresses both accountability and responsibility of the board. I'm for this. The board doesn't want to support it. That's, but I feel that this should be discussed with the legislative body. The town input of the town citizens should be sought, and this gives them a mechanism to have a voice. I'm not saying that we appoint the people that are affected by it. I was just discussing this with the Board of Health, but it does give a mechanism of transparency because it makes sure that the Board of Selectmen has some input, has their concurrence before somebody gets appointed to these boards. I think these boards are critical, and that's all I have to say.
Shelby, you want to say anything?
I'll wait for your...
Okay. I'm in support of the article, even though it changed slightly because of the way it had to be written, to include 2 other entities, because I don't think having concurrence from the Board of Selectmen is an onerous thing. I don't think it's a difficult thing. I can hardly imagine that a competent town manager would suggest appointments in most instances that we wouldn't approve of. So I think it should be a fairly quick process, shouldn't add much at all to the process, and certainly shouldn't be onerous. And I think if the board did have a reason for thinking someone wouldn't be the best on one of these very important committees, that we should be able to say so and have some control over that, more than saying to a town manager, well, if you go ahead with that appointment, you're going to know that you're doing it against our advice, and that might color your performance appraisal. I mean, that's kind of a big stick, So just to say, have the courtesy of having us give you input, I think is a good idea. So I do support it.
So I completely agree with you, Lee. While I certainly have concerns about picking away at the town charter, and I certainly respect the work that any committee puts forth, particularly the group that rewrote the town charter back in 17, I do think, and you said this at a prior meeting, but I do think, concurrence to me implies just an exchange of information in advance of when it's going to happen. And these boards, in particular, the Municipal Building Committee, I'm speaking personally on this, obviously, that I think that it's important that we have advance knowledge of why individuals are being selected and kind of what their qualifications and what do they add to those committees. So I do support this being on the warrant.
Okay. So then, would you make a motion?
Actually, when she
Oh, excuse me,
something about
I'm
that.
sorry,
Yeah.
Bruce.
Yeah, again, I mentioned this at our last meeting. I find this to be a process problem because we just had a charter review committee that worked for over 18 months to develop a new charter that then went through a torturous, and I mean it in the true sense of the word, not torture, but a long process at town meeting to actually adopt, it was the lion's share of our town meeting a couple of years ago to get there, last year, to get that passed. And that, to me, seems to be the appropriate venue for actually editing our town charter instead of us, the five of us up here.
Okay. So we had, yes.
No, I think Ian wanted to say something that I...
He had already made a motion, so we have to vote on Ian's motion, which was seconded by Bruce, which was...
Yeah, I
to
wanted
take
to
it off.
comment too. I know
Yeah.
Selectman Hashmi had a comment.
Oh, okay.
Well, again, as I would say, if you read a surgical textbook, if you look at the operations, they look perfect. There's no blood loss, there's nothing. But once you actually open a patient up, then everything changes. And the charter committee to me is like that. It's looking at an operating atlas, seeing what's out there, giving you the recommended steps. We are now doing the operation, we're running the town. We've identified a problem. I have suggested a mechanism of fixing it.
Yeah, and my thing, I think this is, I think this is a personal issue. I do agree with Bruce that I think this is a process question. If this goes through, I have no problem with the board having concurrence on these things, but I do think that this is up here and it's been called out that they really don't care about the Board of Health and the Board of Assessors. We think those are fine. It's that there's personal issues with the town manager's appointment to the Municipal Building Committee. So we go and change it. So the next time, if we don't like who the building commissioner is, that's not concurrent, that's a town manager's appointment. So I guess we'll potentially have that as a change the next time too. So I think we're opening, as I said, a can of worms here that we're pulling things up if we don't like it. And just to echo what Bruce said, it feels random to me. I don't think we've done public meetings and talking to the various constituencies as the charter review committee did over their arduous 18-month process to really vet what was asked of them and meeting with different folks. So that's my reason for kind of not supporting it, because I think we've not followed a process to go through this. So it's up to the board. The board decides, that's fine. Go forward. I'm not happy with the process that this has gone through, and that's why I made the motion that I did.
Yeah, I'd like to say that it certainly wasn't anything personal on my part, and I feel like you might be intimating that. I felt that there was room for difference of opinion on how the town charter directed this. We got a legal opinion from our lawyer, which said because it's stated one way and then silent in another place, the statement prevails, not the silence. So I think looking at the town charter was confusing enough so that at least one member, maybe more of the board, felt that the process that was supposed to be followed for the municipal building committee wasn't followed. It took an opinion from the lawyer to kind of decide that. I don't think that's very clear in the warrant. If you have to have a lawyer explain to 5 intelligent people why it went the way it did. So I think some clarification on that will be very helpful. Again, I don't think it'll be onerous to have that courtesy of having our approval of choices. And it might, at some point in the future, be quite important. You can't tell. We don't know who our new town manager is going to be. We don't know what kind of appointments a new town manager might make. We might have an opinion coming down the road that we'd like to express and have perhaps what we think might be a more thoughtful process. I think it is also very important to follow the guideline of the town meeting several years ago where it actually suggested what the qualifications of people on that particular board should be. And we've had several appointments that didn't match any of those requirements that the town meeting put out. So I think that's another reason to have some kind of input from the Board of Selectmen. I will take one comment from the audience, or I will from you, Wendy, too.
While he's walking up, when the 2017 Charter Review Committee concluded its work, I know that we've obviously reconvened a new group on a specific issue, but what was the general expectation for those that were on the board of when we would revisit? Like, is it every 5 years?
I don't think there was any general.
No general. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So, Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I'm on the current Charter Review Committee, but I'm not speaking as a representative of that committee. Point out that the earlier article today that's changing the composition of definition of resident and participation in voting is also a modification to the work that was done by the Charter Committee that concluded in 2017.
Thank you.
And you're doing that in a manner that was based on a need for a particular committee. I would argue that the problem of obtaining a quorum in the EDC has more to do with how the committee was managed and its relationship to the business community than whether or not town employees who are serving on that committee who don't live in town could be voting members or just participatory members. But you found a problem with one committee, and you voted to change a town-wide, a charter-wide policy on staff representation on all committees, and there was ample discussion among you in public hearings about that. I don't have a definitive opinion on the current article you're discussing right now, but if it's a process issue, there's precedent for you making minor modifications to the town charter to fine-tune it without necessarily going back to a charter review committee. And you are bringing it to town meeting, which is the legislative body, to discuss.
Just a
and
clarification,
deliberate.
that was a bylaw change, not a charter change. Is that?
Okay, right, but the last charter review committee rewrote the bylaws for the town.
Or the charter?
It was the charter, including the bylaws.
Yeah.
No.
Were written. And so you are modifying the work of that committee, which is,
A precedent.
which is, acceptable under the town charter
I
itself.
like your fine-tuning better than my operative example. That's the word I wish I should have used.
So the residency requirement that we talked about is part of the general bylaws that was voted by the annual town meeting in 1993, just to clarify.
So Wendy?
I just wondered why you can't add that to the charter committee now, this question. Let them work on this. Is there a reason you can't?
Yeah, I think it's because of the scope.
Yeah.
It's the scope.
Can we amend
Their scope, I mean, last time it was to determine, not order of operations, it's a line diagram, who reports to who, and or who reports to whom. This charter review committee is specifically about form of government.
And you couldn't add it.
And that's a big
to
enough
it?
task.
Yeah, it is. I
Really.
just didn't know if you could add that to
No,
it.
I don't think so.
Oh, well, I mean, we could.
We could.
We absolutely could.
Yes.
Because we talked
Yeah,
about
the question is,
eliminating
yeah.
the mayor council form of government as an option, and we decided not to do that.
That was just my opinion. Mr. Durrett?
Having been a member of the August board that spent 18 months dealing with the charter and the charter changes, our attempt in terms of rewriting the charter was simply to streamline the government in the process by which it does its work. It wasn't to disenfranchise the Board of Selectmen or any other group or body within the town not to have an opportunity to deal with those issues that come day to day. And I think in my reading of the charter as it is now written, you are supposed to have that review and opportunity to question an appointment by virtue of the way I remember the way it was written.
Mm-hmm.
Second piece is your process tonight is to allow the town meeting to decide an issue. And if you vote against an article on the warrant, you're taking that opportunity away from the real people who decide what happens in this town, and that is the town meeting. The town meeting set what's in the charter by vote. If you don't give them the opportunity to see it, review it, and discuss it, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
If there's a need for the change, let town meeting decide whether they believe there should be a change or not. So your purpose is not to fix or break anything. Your purpose is to allow the town meeting to have an opportunity to vote. And it's just that simple.
Mhm.
There isn't any reason to refer what your discussion is to a charter committee. It's not rocket science. It's a simple question. Do you want the selectmen to have an opportunity to review and reject, or don't you? And I would think in our current form of government, that's what we should want to do. Let the town meeting decide whether or not this question should be answered yes or no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ian to remove this from the warrant, and a second from Bruce. All those in favor
Hold
of...
on.
Yes?
There's one thing I do want to comment about. It's really a question of point of order regarding how articles are actually submitted to the warrant. And we discussed this a bit at our last meeting, just the mechanism by which articles are put on the town warrant. If a citizen wants to put an article on the town warrant, they have to fill or have a citizen's petition filed. I think it only requires.
Actually, Selectman Treader, if you read Jim Malloy's email, there's a mechanism for Board of Selectmen or other individuals to put articles on the warrant. I believe he sent that email out.
Well, it isn't an individual who's putting this on the warrant, it's the board by our vote.
And I believe Jim sent that email out clearly delineating that selectmen can do this.
Well, it's not just, I think you're right, it's not selectmen, basically anybody, and including, as he mentioned, and I think council opined, that anybody from anywhere in the world basically can put something on our warrant the way it's written right now.
And it's only...
Ultimately, the board has the decision to keep it on or not, but we can have somebody from Northborough decide they want to put it, and we can't.
Okay.
It doesn't have to go through citizens petition. I think that was my understanding. Unfortunately, we looked at it. I think the review from council was that the way it is today, anybody, anywhere can request to put
And I think
an article on our warrant.
to clarify that a little bit more, I think it's also true that, say, one citizen said they wanted something on the warrant, and the Board of Selectmen said, gee, that sounds like a good idea, we'll put that on the warrant. They wouldn't need a petition. If we said, no, we're not interested in putting that on the warrant, then they would have to go get a petition.
Correct. So we can't remove a citizen's petition from the warrant. We can remove an individual citizen's request. We have the power to, with the control of the warrant, to remove that. But yeah, if a citizen's petition comes in, so they get the requisite signatures, we cannot remove that as a board.
All right, I'm corrected. Thanks.
So we have a motion from Mr. Johnson and a second from Mr. Treader to take Article 33 off of the warrant. All those in favor? 2. All those opposed? 3. So it will stay on the warrant, 3-2. Okay. And we were nice to each other. Okay.
Do you want to vote it?
I would like to, well, oh yes, so now we have to vote to approve to keep it on. So I move that we,
support it, basically.
that we give our support, vote to give our support to Article 33.
I made that motion, Madam Chair. Oh, by the way, my name should be removed from that.
I made the motion.
Oh, sorry. I'll second it.
You can second it.
My name
Yes,
should be removed from that.
Yeah, it should be
warrant
Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor of keeping it on the warrant? Got 3. All those opposed?
Well, supporting it, I'm sorry. We voted to keep it on the warrant.
Yep.
So your motion was?
To keep it on the warrant.
Oh, we already voted. Yours is to support it, right?
Right, to
It's
support.
to support it and keep it on. Yeah,
No,
because
we
you didn't
already
vote
voted
to
to
take
keep-
it off.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
on
okay,
now,
so it
so
was
it's
on.
support.
Yep, so now it's just to support. Yes. You got it. My goodness.
Yep.
Now, we are on to discussion and vote on contract.
We had voted.
It's,
Yeah, we
yes.
had a vote. We had a vote.
Yeah, we did.
3-2.
3-2.
3-2, yeah. Okay, now, we need to go into executive session.
3-2 to support it.
Can I just go through it to make sure I got everyone's?
Yep.
So all of them, I have 5-0 in support. except for Article 17, 18, and 19 is 4-1. Also are changing the town manager statement in Article 17 to say a portion of the east-west trail. And then Article 33 is 3-2 in support, and change it to Board of Selectmen. And then you'll need to vote to close the warrant.
Yeah, and you had made one grammatical change
Oh,
too.
yeah.
What one? I'm sorry?
There was one just adding the S to the.
Oh, you know what, I have a
or-
question. Actually, I have a question that might put something on the warrant. We have a suggestion from Jim under manager's report to pay $3,300
Oh, yes.
for
Yeah.
the survey done for the Spur House. And to take that money out of the $5,000 that the town approved as a budget for the Spur House Committee to help them with getting the property ready to sell. So the RFP, the marketing.
Right.
We didn't think maybe of the survey bill at the time. And now we may have to have repairs, or at least we're going to have an inspection, and perhaps repairs to the heating system or the plumbing if it leaks. So that might be another expense that's coming up. So I asked Christy about this. If there only leaves $1,700 left for whatever other expenses are coming up, and Steve thought that the taking care of the heating having a plumber come over and do that could easily eat up $1,000. So anyway, I think we have a choice to either put something on the warrant to increase this funding to the Spur building to cover the $3,300. And Christy might have another suggestion because she was going to think about it after she and I had a phone call about it this afternoon. So what were your thoughts, Christy?
So I did talk to the finance director and the buildings and grounds supervisor, and since the Spur House is still technically it's still a town building, it could appropriately come out of the buildings and grounds budget.
Okay.
Just with the understanding that if he were to come into some sort of issue at the end of the year, he might need money.
Okay, all right.
Which one,
Thank you.
the survey or the?
No.
Or the plumbing?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know what the number is for the plumbing,
Right.
but.
Yeah, my recommendation to Jim's thing, I know we're jumping ahead, is I'd say let's pay for it outside, whether it's through the
Yeah.
Forbes Municipal Project or whatever. I don't think we charge it to the Spur House building.
Yeah.
So do we have the money to do that outside of the 5,000? I mean, would that be a
500.
problem for us?
No.
No?
Yeah, so I was going to make a specific comment when we got to this portion of our meeting, and that is, I would have expected that as part of the Forbes project, that there would have, surveying work would have to be done. I know the transformer was sort of a little bit of a change and a nuance to kind of what the Spur House Committee ultimately recommended, so I could sort of wrap my head around separating that, but we're going to have to address the property as we address parking for the municipal building, whether it's stayed or went. So to me, the 3,300 specifically, nothing to do with heating, should be part of the Forbes project. So I just want to make that clear for my view on that for the record. As it relates to the heating and building and maintenance, it sounds like we have our answer for how that comes out of building and grounds.
I guess, sorry, so mine was, I think it's related to the Spur House, not the Forbes building. But in that, I think, to Christie's point, I think putting it to buildings and grounds, because it's still a town property, we're doing stuff around town property, to me, we just charge it through our buildings and grounds expenses.
Yep.
So thank you for coming
As
up.
opposed to putting it in there.
Thank you for coming up with that solution.
We're surveying it to sell it.
Leah, thank you for coming up with that solution. Okay, so that takes care of that problem. So then, there's nothing else to be added to the warrant. So now we need a motion to close the warrant.
I'll make a motion to close the warrant.
Yes. Second.
All those in favor? It's 5-0. Okay. So now we need to go into executive session, and I think I have a motion from our vice chair.
Yes, I'll move to enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 20, 3821-2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel.
Okay.
And
Second
that we
that?
will
Oh.
enter into exec session, but come back into open meeting at the conclusion of that executive session.
Okay, so we have a roll call vote?
Second.
And a roll call vote?
Marshall, yes?
Better, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Okay, so we can go downstairs unless everybody wants to leave. Not here going to this.
Charter, not the bylaws. That's how I would interpret it.
The thing I was going to call you about was
What, do we read it? Do we read it?
No.
We just say that we accepted it?
Ever. And it's some of the best eating I've done.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I have to say.
No, I mean, we were by the river, our hotel, we were in Harris, and it's kind of close to the river, just a few blocks away. The first time we ate someplace we drove, it was just crap.
Okay.
Okay.
So we are now back in session. Would you just ask if he knows?
If Aiden's
back in session. Okay. So we had an executive session and we approved an employment agreement between Christy Williams and the town of Westborough. And so the big picture is this will be effective as of, we didn't write that on here.
October 1st.
October 1st? Should, I think it's been, oh, so that we entered into the agreement on
The 25th.
the 25th day of September, and it will become effective October 1. And she is going to be interim town manager. And we switched that from, we had voted that it was going to be acting. Do we know?
Interim/acting.
Yeah, I think they were interchangeable,
Oh,
is what
okay.
we were given as guidance.
Okay. And the initial term of the agreement shall be from October 1 to December 31, 2018, or until the position of permanent town manager has been filled by the town, whichever occurs first. Unless the position of a permanent town manager has been filled or the interim town manager has been removed in accordance with Section 3 below, this agreement shall automatically renew for an additional 3-month periods for up to a maximum of 9 months. So that's sort of the big pieces. And this is a salary of $142,500 a year. Did you have any questions, Christie? Do you want anything else read out loud?
No, I just thank you.
I'd move that we approve the contract of the employment agreement between Christy Williams and the town of Westborough to act as interim town manager based on the details.
Second.
Okay,
Do
second.
you want to add the thing about the clarification of 9, or would that?
Yes, with the clarification from legal counsel, just some wording on 9B, just to make sure it reads correctly.
Thank you. That was important, Dad.
And you're okay with that, Chris?
Yep.
That 9B? We'll just get that. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Would you like a receipt to celebrate? All right.
Okay, so I'm going to pass that
Words
around
are working with you.
for signing.
Yes.
And our next issue is discussion and vote on Selectmen liaison to the Country Club Operating Committee. And I think we have a volunteer for this.
I'd move that we nominate or appoint Selectman Shelby Marshall to be the Selectman liaison to the Country Club Operating Committee.
I second that motion.
Oh, is that something that you wanted to do?
I would love to. I actually raised my hand at the last meeting.
Oh, okay. All
Always a
right,
chance to back
so,
out.
I'd forgotten that you golfed.
I do.
Okay. All those in favor of Shelby Marshall?
I don't think I can vote for myself.
Yes, you can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll vote for myself.
Make it unanimous.
Absolutely vote for
If
yourself.
you don't think you're good enough, why should we?
All right, well, I didn't know procedurally. Great, all right. Vote of confidence. Thanks.
Okay, that was nice. Now it is 9:45, 9:54, holy cow. Okay, vote on easements for Town Hall Alley parking lot. Town manager.
So as the board is aware, we've been working with our neighbors for a couple years regarding the right-of-way outside of the town hall, between town hall and subway, and then that goes around behind the building. We have received we've reached agreement with 2 of our 3 neighbors for them to receive parking rights behind their buildings, and in exchange for them to allow us to close the alley and to give up their easement. So I have the documents that were prepared by Chris Senni, and Wendy is here to notarize those documents.
Okay, so we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreements for parking easements and releases of rights of way between the town of Westborough and Bradford and Constance Ebert, trustees of the State Street 2011 Realty Trust, Souza Group Incorporated, and George and William Abadili and Elaine Saliba as general partners of BEG Realty Company, all as attached.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Now, we need to sign these now while Wendy's here.
Poor Wendy, she's been
Waiting for us.
Well, we can sign those as we go through the rest of our things.
Yep.
So, discussion.
I
Yeah.
have them.
Okay.
Discussion and vote on agreement between the MBTA and the town of Westborough. Christie's also going to present that. You've all, I'm sure you've all read the agreement.
Just assume that
She's right there. She's going to watch them sign it. So as you're also aware, we've been working with the MBTA to provide additional parking by the T station. The agreements come before you before, and there was some requests for some modifications which have been made. And so now we are looking for approval of the agreement that's before you.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion, sorry. Looking at too many different things. So I move to approve the agreement between the MBTA and the town of Westborough as attached, and further to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I know it's late, but just a couple of quick questions, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Will the MBTA will be setting the rate for the parking in those spots, right? Not us, right? And is there going to be a difference between parking there and parking inside the lot? Or they'll determine that?
It is not, it's the
It
same.
says it's the same.
Same rate, okay. And then, will the money can we make a provision that this money go towards like improving our sidewalks, or will it just go into the general fund?
I believe it'll just go into the general fund.
So we can't allocate it separately then?
Not right now. I can talk to the finance director.
Would you mind just saying that maybe we can use this money or invest it? Go ahead.
Well, I think it's worth exploring how it could be invested.
Right.
Or allocated, not invested, sorry, versus, I wouldn't be supportive of you exploring a specific option.
Right,
just,
I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have a question. Oh.
So this is just the one place?
There's 3 sheets going around.
There are 3 sheets? Oh, okay, you got more. Yep, I got it. I thought there should be more than one.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Do you, I found the language in the contract, I'm fine with it, but Christy, do you know offhand how many what is the number of ADA spaces that have to be increased? Or how many we already have? It wasn't delineated, which I wouldn't expect it to be.
Right, so I did have that same question, which I asked the town manager earlier today, and we don't know that we'll need any more spaces. But the provision is in there that if they do need the additional space, that we would have to pay for that.
Okay, or it would be offset, right? It's an offset.
Right. Yeah, and the money that we
because it's based on use of each spot. Right. Okay, and then my other question was that. I would just, I guess, as we start to work with the MBTA and we get their invoices or their statements that they're going to send, that it's providing the data that we feel we're comfortable with. I know that was a specific piece I had asked about, like, I know the contract wouldn't specifically detail, here's the report or the invoice you're going to get, but we should understand, kind of the proof of the parking lot capacity. Is it, like, are we getting reimbursed properly?
Yeah.
So so as those come in, I presume you're going to get those, or Leah receives them, that we're just comfortable early on in the relationship with the data we're getting, and that it provides us enough information to validate the income that we're receiving.
Sure.
Right.
And then I was wondering, it said if somebody doesn't pay, that the MBTA will contact them. But how will they know who it was that didn't pay?
If someone who's parking in the space doesn't pay?
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically, it's the same process as they go through for parking in the lot.
Right.
And they basically will.
But this is going to be some kind of a.
It's not a meter, it's a pay by phone.
Right, but how?
Based on your license
so then
plate.
they would have.
They would have that
You have to put your license plate number into the phone thing? Okay, so that's what I didn't know. I didn't understand that. Okay, then, neither Christy nor I were sure if when we put the lighting on Smith Valve Parkway, I think we just put it from the driveway into the parking lot up toward the transit-oriented village.
Yeah, it is. It's just from the T to the transit-oriented village.
So we will have to add parking lights, so it covers all of the parking spaces. That's in the contract, that it will be well lit.
Okay.
So that's an additional expense.
Would we have to pay, so we're not going to get reimbursed for that either?
I wouldn't think so.
No.
They said the contract says it's our responsibility.
Right. But we should see how far that, obviously someone will determine what that lighting has to be before we
we would work with the town engineer. Yep.
I just wanted people to be aware that there's one more expense.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
We have a second. I think we.
Yeah, so now, any more discussion on that? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? We've got 5-0. Okay, discussion of vote to approve the settlement agreement of the town of Hopkinton and the town of Westborough. I think everybody read it.
Yep.
Does Christie need to explain anything else to you?
Just real quickly.
Do you have
so
any
this
questions?
Sorry, yeah, just real quickly, this does not, this makes them pay, but it does not allow them to renegotiate their contract.
Correct.
Right? Okay. And just the 52%, why did we give them the 50, I mean, it was their water that messed up our sewer, our system. So shouldn't they be paying more than us?
I think it's
They are
prorated on
2%.
their usage. It's their usage.
It's their.
Yeah, it's based on the original IMA, it's just a calculation.
Okay.
Okay?
I'd like to
All
make
right.
a motion. Move to approve the settlement agreement between the town of Hopkinton and the town of Westborough, and further to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
And this money goes towards water enterprise.
To sewer retainers.
Sewer.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Town manager report.
So we already touched on a couple of these, but related to the IRS matter that you heard about from the town manager previously, where some of the documents hadn't been filed in a previous year. Our finance director was able to pull the documents together very quickly and respond to the IRS. And so the IRS has considered the matter closed with no fine, which is fantastic.
Can we thank her for that?
Yeah, kudos.
Absolutely.
I know she's left to
Thank
go.
her
Just give
every-
her thanks from the board.
Yeah, that was,
Well done.
yep, very well done.
And then the other item on the town manager report is the agreement with Toll Brothers. We had found that there was corrective action that needed to be taken related to fire code issues, and there's a memorandum of understanding between the town and Toll Brothers indicating that they're going to take corrective action at Westborough Village.
Which is
Very
awesome.
good. Very good.
Thank you, Chief.
Well done. There he is. You can
Lot of
see him
work
down
there.
there. Okay. Now, that's it for that. Issues and correspondence. I'll start with Ian tonight.
Yeah, the only thing I had in town moderator mentions, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out to town meeting. We packed the room. It was great to see that engagement, and hope to see even more engagement at our coming fall town meeting. So just thank you to everyone that came out and participated in the process. And that is it.
Shelby?
Sure. So before we enter into the fun of town meeting on October 15th, I want to invite everyone to attend the upcoming Fall Festival that the Rotary will be hosting. It's on October 13th, which is Saturday, and it starts at 11 o'clock, and that will be at the Bay State Commons. It's going to be music and food and craft beer and free stuff for the kids, and be a great afternoon. We'll wrap up the day with a concert sponsored by the Recreation Department. And the following day, there will be a classic car show down at the 50 East Main Street parking lot that folks can take advantage of too and enjoy. So anyway, this is a reschedule of the Spring Festival in the fall, so it might be a new tradition. We'll see. The other item Chief Laurie brought this up, and perhaps for a future discussion, or I'm not sure sort of where this goes, but he mentioned concerns in light of the recent fire at Fountainhead about safety concerns about the number of folks that sort of were needed to be evacuated versus maybe what might be on kind of an understanding of occupancy. And so I don't know procedurally how this works, but I do think that there's probably discussion to be had there, both for public safety, resident rights, and
Sure.
it's a complex issue, but I do think I would like to see the board ask.
I did, actually. I asked at that last meeting that that be dealt with.
I think we need.
Oh, I didn't recall.
And Jim said that it would be the Board of Health.
So internally, we have talked about that to include both chiefs, the Board of Health, and also Youth and Family Services. So we're just working on getting that together.
I actually, so Shelby and I seem to connect on different levels sometimes, but I would actually think that we should invite the owners of Fountain, or whoever owns them, to come to the, I mean, this was a significant fire. It displaced all these residents.
Yeah.
I would like to know what they have, you know, it's not, I mean, I know what our fire department did. That's great. But I want to know, what have they done since this fire? What have they done to improve resident safety? What are the steps that they're going to do in the future? I think we as a board need to have them come before us and discuss. I was going to discuss this in my own issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're interrelated. The public safety piece, I think, is really important. And I love that Youth and Family Services is being included, obviously, with the Board of Health as well. So, and I apologize that was specifically requested previously.
Yeah, well, I was very upset about it because I heard that morning from Pat how many more people live there. So I had reached out to him about it then. Christy, are you going to involve the school department on that at all?
Yeah,
but I think we should also have them come to the...
Yeah, this is just to talk about how many people are there.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely, we could do that.
Yeah,
Yep.
because they must have some insight with all the children they have.
Yes.
We used to ask all of the owners of the apartment complexes to provide us with a list of all the residents that live there. And little by little, they stopped doing it. They don't respond, so we don't ask. But as far as the census goes, by law, every person is supposed to be accounted for. And so I said that should go back on to the owners of the buildings. I mean, the people are not filling out the form.
I think it's part of the discussion.
So, yeah, I think the group that's working with it might be going to ask if one of the volunteers in your office could add up what it looks like is in Fountainhead according to your census.
That's what Pat was going by, 400 people or 5, you thought you were going into a building with 400 or 500 people?
Was that from the town census, though?
Yeah.
So Jim
No,
did say at the last meeting.
I think it was from the owner.
Street list.
No.
No, I got that from the leasing office rep.
Yeah, it was the leasing office rep that he got that
Oh, you didn't
information
get that
from.
from the street?
So when I asked
No.
when I asked the leasing office representative how many people occupied that building, I believe I was told 543. And they said, however, there's upwards of 1,000 and this is why. And they told us, because, well, I told you the reasons why. So I would respectfully request that we have a plan. We're just getting our feet under us with some other things.
Okay.
We were letting Fountainhead finish up the punch list of things that myself and the building commissioner asked them to finish up. They're also scheduled in October for their 5-year re-inspection with the building commissioner. Apartment complexes are there for their certificate of occupancy, require that re-inspection every 5 years. Ironically, it's next month. We were going to be going there with them. I would respectfully request that you, before you bring them before you, to let us do our job and let us get our feet under us at those buildings and do our thing.
Would you
I will
mind-
be happy to provide you a report on the findings.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you come back to the board when that's done?
I'd be happy to.
Thanks, Chief.
But this is actually what you pay us for, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. Did you have something to add, Christy?
Yeah, so it did,
Another one?
so I think what was said when it was requested at the last meeting was that we would bring it up at a department head meeting, which we did. And Wendy did have that conversation with Amber. And there was some discussion about how the school department could help facilitate the filling out of those forms. So we touched on it, but certainly there's more work to do. Sure.
Yeah, but you put together a group working on it. That's the important thing.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, so, Bruce,
Yeah, on October 13th at the Rotary's Fall Festival, Spring Festival. Fall Festival sounds great. The Bike and Pedestrian Committee will be there distributing helmets that have been donated by a law firm in Boston. It's Breakstone, White, and Gluck, and we're donating helmets putting helmets on kids' heads. So it's a lot of fun.
that's great.
You bet.
That's wonderful. Ashmi.
I've been behaving, but there are just some real quick things. There was a tractor trailer that was parked at the pickleball court on Lyman Street, and there were indentations. Are we following up with the owner? Or are we going to be finding them because that's our pickleball court, and they parked there illegally, I think.
So the police chief responded to you. I'll check with him on where.
Yeah,
that's
could
at.
you just find out, because the second thing is a request to the board, maybe at a future, so I'm interested in senior tax relief, just like Shelby was elected to the golf committee. I'd like to be maybe voted as a liaison to the senior taxation aid committee.
So put that on the next agenda?
Yeah, if we could do that. And then the city of Lawrence requested mutual aid. I know our fire group went there. Are we going to be sending them any other support from our town? I think they're looking for, I know there was a part-time building inspector that we used to have. Can we send, let him know that they need help? I'm just wondering, how are we going to be helping them? I'd like to help them.
Do you want to speak to that? Is there any?
Because they sent this email out to the Board of Health, and I'm on a Board of Health thing, and I got it. I don't know if any of you guys have gotten that email. I'll forward it to you then. Okay. And then, speaking of Lawrence, with regards to, and the discussion that Carol was having with us this morning, I think it would be helpful, again, to bring our gas, Eversource, because to let us know if there are problems. I think there was a rumor, or there was an article, not a rumor, an article, that there was a problem with the Lawrence gas infrastructure. They were discussing it, and then it got delayed. So I'm wondering if it's worthwhile having Eversource come and discuss the state of the gas infrastructure in our town. How old is it?
It's not theirs.
It doesn't Eversource own the gas?
Oh, it's not the people that are in Lawrence, I'm sorry.
No, I know, but in light of everything that's happened, it may be worthwhile having the gas company that's in town come and discuss the state of their infrastructure.
I think Pat was...
No, I know, he's discussing the gas leaks.
Yeah.
I'm saying, bring the gas company. I think that may be something that we could put as an agenda item.
I would support that, the future meeting.
I don't know, to me, it doesn't seem like that's our job. I think it's the fire department.
Well, the fire department's job is to look for gas leaks and take care of them. I'd like to know, go ahead.
It's more than that. So they have an annual meeting, they invite us to, and where they talk about their local emergency planning, they give us a whole booklet on what they've done to prepare for gas emergencies. We really have a great working relationship with all of our utilities, and they're in Marlborough, they're very responsive to our calls. We wait less than 20 minutes for an annual response.
What I'm just trying to figure out is what is the state? What is the state of the infrastructure? And that's why I'm thinking we should have them come to the board. There's concern in the town. Go ahead.
So Eversource did put out a document to municipalities that I can forward to you and also post on Facebook regarding their investment in the gas lines and their leak survey program that they do.
Okay.
And then after that, maybe you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you send that over to me? That'd be great.
I'll send it to everyone.
Yes. Yeah, please.
All
right. And then there was some of the residents had approached me that there was a Metro West article that said, on 9/10/2018, town manager signs contract with Lexington. And apparently the newspaper reporter said that there was an individual present there as a representative from the town of Westborough. The chairperson of the Lexington Board of Selectmen indicated that a visitor was there to show support from the town of Westborough. I'm asking, did one of us attend to represent from the town of Westborough? And if so, was the chair and the board informed?
I wasn't informed of anything.
So nobody from our board?
No, I did go. Yeah, I went.
To show as a representative from the town of Westborough?
No, I went as a private citizen.
Because
That's not how you were identified, Bruce.
It was identified as a chair, was there to show support from the chair. That's how the chair recognized you.
Both
She did recognize me. Yeah, she said I'm a member of the board of selectmen.
and a representative of the town of Westborough.
Oh, no.
She used those words, actually.
She did use
I watched the film.
The film, and as well as it was in the newspaper.
And you didn't object.
So.
Okay, well, all right. Yeah, I did that.
Well, you're a stickler for that, Bruce. You're always telling us that
So,
one person can't represent the board.
Well, right, and I'm not, right.
So,
okay.
All right.
If you were attending, I think it would have been nice to just let us know you were going, that's all.
Oh, okay.
That's all, and I appreciate that you were there to support him.
Okay.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, one meeting that I did attend, but I didn't represent the town, was the CMRPC meeting on September the 13th. I believe you missed that meeting, Selectman Treader, which I believe you also missed the March 22 meeting. So I just want to make sure that you have time to go to these meetings, because this meeting was about the 2020 census, which is the first digital census that's going to happen. And if the board is interested, I can send you details about that. And I also attended the CMPPO meeting, which their long-range transportation plan for the town, for the state was discussed. And if anybody wants, I can send you details on that.
I mean, I think any information that you receive from those meetings would be helpful for
Yeah,
us to.
like I said, I went to the
just as a
CMRCP
rule.
meeting just for myself, but there was nobody from Westborough that was there.
Yeah, well, I think it's, I mean, just anytime we're liaisons and meetings happen and we're there. No, I'm just saying, yes.
I'll send you the stuff. That's
Send
not a
it.
problem.
Great.
Send it, that's good.
Thank you.
Okay. I also want to thank the voters that came. In fact, I thought about it in the middle of the night, and I wondered if it would be possible to actually send a postcard to everybody who came to say how great they were to be here. Because I know you have everybody's name, you could do it, but it'd be a little bit of work. Well, I would like to do something like that. And I wanted you to know that as you realize, a young woman from the Muslim festival asked if I could go to that, so I was able to go to that. And Chief Laurie was there before I got there. And our former Chief Gordon was directing traffic. And it was a wonderful, wonderful festival, and I spoke on behalf of all of us, welcoming this new activity in town and how much we appreciate the diversity that they're bringing. So it was well attended and it was a lot of fun. And that's all I have.
Can I just add that the farewell reception for Jim Malloy is in Memorial Hall on Thursday from 4 to 6.
That's this Thursday,
Yes,
from 4 to 6.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And we also have our strategic planning meeting tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 2. And where is it?
Here.
Okay, it's here.
If the plaster doesn't fall.
Even if the plaster falls.
8:30 to 2:30.
Right.
It said 8:30 to 2.
Yeah, originally
Okay,
it
just-
said 2. So around there, yeah.
Well, I have a meeting in Northborough at 3.
Yeah, I think it'll be
So-
fine. I think
okay.
that she's just.
Shouldn't be hard to get there from here.
No,
It's a
it'll be
short drive, but I would have to leave by 2:30 anyway, I guess. Okay. All right, so now I guess we have to go back into executive session.
What about agenda items? Are we
Oh,
good?
excuse me, thank you so much. I had taken the list, I don't know if you all took the list as well, from what Paula had sent, and this is what we have on there so far. Discussion vote on Veteran Services Regional Contract Renewal. Discussion vote on Selectmen's top 5 goals, so we all have to get ours in. Request to approve Westborough Rotary Field of Flags. Electronic permitting presentation from the Building Commissioner and IT Director. It's been in the works for a long time. Discussion vote to create a gift fund for internships in government service. Discussion vote on changes to library positions. Discussion for the for the K-9 program. Appointment to GTAG from Katie Curran-Mestra, and appointment to Senior Disabled Taxation Relief Company, Bob Abair. And then to appoint a Board of Selectmen member to the Senior Tax Relief Committee for study.
The next meeting will be, I'm just wondering if it would be helpful to go through, I know Jim Malloy sent us an extensive list. I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for us to kind of review the list with Christie at the next board meeting.
I think it would be. What does everybody else think?
Transitional items?
Yeah, just like, hey, where do we stand? What's the next steps? I think it would be helpful just to give us a sense of organization. And I think my personal feeling is that we do that list and defer the selectmen goal after we've gone through that list, just so, because that's not, the selectmen goals can wait. Let's just go through with Christie, like, hey,
Prioritize something.
Let's what do you feel as you're settling in that needs to be done? Let's do that at the next meeting. She will have, when's our next meeting, by the way? With this,
Second Tuesday in October.
but that's going to be the same day.
9th.
No.
So you'll be in your job.
Yeah.
So you'll be getting a sense of your job, and we get a sense of what needs to be done, and we go from there. That would be my suggestion to the board, and do the selectmen goals later after that, after town meeting.
Yeah, the 9th. How does that sound to everybody? Sounds okay to me.
Yeah,
I think it is more important than our top 5 goals.
Yeah, no, I think supporting Christie as she transitions, and I can see that definitely changing some of our goals. I would love to wrap the goal up if we, those,
I agree with
before
you.
town meeting if we can.
We can keep that on the agenda. We
No,
just
I know,
have
I just added that,
Yeah.
even if we have to defer, I'd like to go in optimistically, we're gonna.
Yeah,
There's a lot of-
it's going to be a long meeting just from the,
A lot of these are quick issues, though.
You're on the record.
yes, that was going to be this meeting.
Well, see, when,
We cut all that stuff
Yeah.
out to keep this one short.
Sure.
yeah, we did. But- And I
I
did,
tried,
yeah. And when I was on
I
the,
helped out Lee with this one, she was on vacation.
she did, he helped
I
me.
failed.
Well, I think neither of us realized that the chief had 23 slides.
Well, I think we also added.
'Cause we should have-
We
that should have
also
been-
were pretty successful in wrapping up a lot of things.
At the end.
that
No,
we
I
just
think
threw
we did
on,
well.
so.
Let's not beat ourselves up.
Okay.
So one other thing, Madam Chair, not to add to your burden, but I know that you had asked for the goals to be voted on. I feel that the goals should be discussed in open meeting, and we should vote on them just like we did the last time. I don't think we should.
It says discussion and vote.
Oh, discussion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because you didn't see it in front of you.
We're gonna just send our personal votes so they can sort of be ranked like we did last time.
And that's not what I wanted. What I was saying is that we should do the same thing that we did,
Yeah.
prioritize them in public. Like, hey, this,
Well, we can do that. We'll have them
okay.
sent in, so then you just say you want, we can easily say, these are my 5,
Oh,
these are
okay.
your 5.
Yeah.
And then we can see how they all.
Have the
add up.
discussion around that.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I think we did that successfully last time where we sort of voiced our preferences, if you will, and then we talked about it, like, why do you feel so strongly about this, and then we decided, so.
Okay, that's a good point. All right. So, now,
Sorry, back just to the request, I guess, I looked at Christie too, is that okay with, I mean, a lot of the things there are just meetings and whatever, so
Yeah,
I'm not
they're
sure
sort
what, do we want to read into the record the open items that, like I'm looking at it, it's like data dashboard committee.
Right.
We just look it over them, but I think it would be helpful for us to just discuss this with her in real time, like, hey, where do we stand, what needs to be done.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to give you information about how I'm progressing on goals, or on those items. I think a lot of them are pretty internal. And I don't know that by October 9th, much will have happened on some of them. I mean, I don't know.
How about we identify the ones where there has been, like, I mean, the one that I had been to put on my list a while ago before we got Jim's list was the downtown parking study and where that stands. Like, we haven't,
Sure.
I don't know where that stands. So there are some things that have been out there for a while. I think we just need a general update on.
So you're talking about Jim's transition memo, or you're talking about the open items list?
No, Jim's transition.
Yeah,
Okay.
outstanding items and other transition information.
Right,
And I think it may just be just quickly looking over, but I think it would be helpful to have a discussion, prior to our setting goals, because again, I feel for you stepping into this role, and, we want to be supportive, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I mean, she may think something, and we may think something different. I think it would be helpful for us to.
Well, right, and if there's something that was on Jim's list, and you're like, you know what, I could really, I think we can move this till,
later.
April.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we want to hear that.
well, I think we have to agree on what she should be doing, because we agreed that Jim should be doing it, even though it was all incremental, one thing came over another. But to go over that whole thing and say, yes, this still should be the game plan, but maybe this has a little lower priority now, where you have so many new things on your plate, would be helpful for you. Or you might have a question yourself, and say, gee.
How about Christie brings to our attention the ones has concerns about, not concerns, but concerns, or where maybe the timeline should be moved, rather than going through, to Ian's point, the whole list. That seems,
I don't need to ever talk to us about the union contracts that we haven't started yet, which is, those were 7 of the items that were on.
right, exactly. So I don't know that we have to review the list as much as I would love to hear from you of where, where you got a yellow flag up and you're saying caution.
Or that, hey, these are items of concern for me. I think that seems to be, that's fine. Okay.
Okay. All right, so now, have a motion?
Yes, I move to enter into executive session. Too
Say
late.
that 3 times
Executive
fast.
session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, 21(3) and 6, I believe, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, and further to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, and that we will only enter into open session for purpose of adjournment.
Okay. Or will we actually come back to open session at all?
No. We always say.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have to adjourn.
Open and close,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Because what I stated that open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the negotiation of the town, and the board will not reconvene in open session.
Okay, so maybe I said it wrong.
Yeah. So we won't reconvene.
Yeah, you don't have to reconvene in open session.
We just adjourn.
Yep.
Better yes.
Marshall, yes.
Emery, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Watch me, yes.
Oh, who seconded? I seconded, second.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
10:38.